It may seem incredible, but it is true. The world in which we live is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. All that we behold, though it appears without, it is within, in our imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. Therefore, the secret of imagining is the greatest of all problems, to the solution of which everyone should aspire. For supreme power, supreme wisdom, and supreme joy lie in the solution of this great mystery. When man solves the mystery of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation, and that is, imagining creates reality. Divine imagining and human imagining are not two powers at all, but one. The valid distinction which exists between them lies not in the substance with which they operate, but in the degree of intensity of the operant power itself. Acting at high tension, an imaginal act is an immediate objective fact. Keyed low, an imaginal act is realized in a time process. Human history, with its forms of governments, its revolutions, its wars, and in fact the rise and fall of nations, could be written in terms of the imaginal activities of men and women. All imaginative men and women are forever casting forth enchantments, and all passive men and women who have no powerful imaginative lives are continually passing under the spell of their power. If imagination is the only thing that acts or is in existing beings or men, as Blake believed, then we should never be certain that it was not some woman treading in the winepress who began that subtle change in men's minds, or that the passion because of which the earth has been drenched in blood did not begin in the imagination of some shepherd boy, lighting up his eye for a moment before it ran upon its way. The future is the imaginal activity of man in its creative march. Imagining is the creative power, not only of the poet, the artist, the actor, and orator, but of the scientist, the inventor, the merchant, and the artisan. Its abuse in unrestrained, unlovely image-making is obvious, but its abuse in undue repression breeds a sterility which robs a man of actual wealth of experience. Imagining novel solutions to ever more complex problems is far more noble than to restrain or kill out desire. Life is the continuing solution of a continuously synthetic problem. Imagining creates events. Our world, created out of men's imagining, comprise unnumbered warring beliefs. Therefore, there can never be a perfectly stable or static state. Today's events are bound to disturb our yesterday's established order. Imaginative men and women invariably unsettle a pre-existing peace of mind. Hold fast to your ideal in your imagination. Nothing can take it from you but your failure to persist in imagining the ideal realized. Imagine only such states that are of value or promise well. To attempt to change circumstances before we change our imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an imaginal change. Everything we do, unaccompanied by an imaginal change, is but futile readjustment of surfaces. Imagining the wish fulfilled brings about a union with that state, and during that union we behave in keeping with our imaginal change. This shows us that an imaginal change will result in a change of behavior. However, our ordinary imaginal alterations, as we pass from one state to another, are not transformations, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whenever one state grows so stable as to become our constant mood, our habitual attitude, then that habitual state defines our character and is a true transformation. Now let me call your attention to the design on the cover of this record. You will notice a man sitting on a park bench, imagining himself to be in a home. This is the secret of those who lie in bed awake while they dream things true. They know how to live in their own dream house until, in fact, they do. Man, through the medium of a controlled waking dream, can predetermine his future. That imaginal activity of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled leads man across a bridge of incident to the fulfillment of the dream. If we live in the dream, thinking from it and not of it, then the creative power of imagining will answer our adventurous fancy, and the wish fulfilled will break in upon us and take us unawares. Man is all imagination. Therefore, man must be where he is in imagination, for his imagination is himself. To realize that imagination is not something tied to the senses or enclosed within the spatial boundary of the body is most important. Although man moves about in space by movement of his physical body, he need not be so restricted. He can move by a change in what he is aware of. However real the scene on which sight rests, man can gaze on one never before witnessed. He can always remove the mountain if it upsets his concept of what life ought to be. This ability to mentally move from things as they are to things as they ought to be is one of the most important discoveries that man can make. It reveals man as a center of imagining, with powers of intervention which enable him to alter the course of observed events, moving from success to success through a series of mental transformations of nature, of others, and himself. How does he do it? Self-abandonment. That is the secret. He has to abandon himself mentally to his wish fulfilled, in his love for that state, and in so doing live in the new state and no more in the old state. Now we can commit ourselves to what we do not love. So the secret of self-commission is faith plus love. Faith is believing what is incredible. We commit ourselves to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in faith that this act of self-commission will become a reality, and it will, because imagining creates reality. Imagination is both conservative and transformative. It is conservative when it builds its world from images supplied by memory and the evidence of the senses. It is creatively transformative when it imagines things as they ought to be, building its world out of the generous dreams of fancy. In the procession of images, the ones that take precedence naturally are those of the senses. Nevertheless, a present sense impression is only an image. It does not differ in nature from a memory image or the image of a wish. What makes a present sense impression so objectively real is the individual's imagination functioning in it and thinking from it, whereas in a memory image or a wish, the individual's imagination is not functioning in it and thinking from it, but is functioning out of it and thinking of it. If the individual would enter into the image in his imagination, as the design on the cover of this record suggests, then would he know what it is to be creatively transformative. Then would he realize his wish, and then he would be happy. Every image can be embodied, but unless man himself enters the image and thinks from it, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the wish to be realized by the mere passage of time. That which requires imaginative occupancy to produce its effect obviously cannot be effected without such occupancy. We cannot be in one image and not suffer the consequences of not being in another. Imagination is spiritual sensation. Enter the image of the wish fulfilled, then give it sensory vividness and tones of reality by mentally acting as you would act were it a physical fact. Now, this is what I mean by spiritual sensation. Imagine that you are holding a rose in your hand. Smell it. Do you detect the odor of roses? Well, if the rose is not here, why is its fragrance in the air? Through spiritual sensation, that is, through imaginal sight, sound, scent, taste, and touch, man can give to the image sensory vividness. If he does, all things will conspire to aid his harvesting. And on reflection, he will see how subtle were the threads that led to his goal. He could never have devised the means which his imaginal activity used to fulfill itself. If man longs to escape from his present sense fixation, to transform his present life into a dream of what might well be, he has but to imagine that he is already what he wants to be, and then feel the way he would expect to feel under such circumstances. Let him, like the make-believe of a child who is remaking the world after its own heart, create his world out of pure dreams of fancy. Let him mentally enter into his dream. Let him mentally do what he would actually do were it physically true. He will discover that dreams are realized not by the rich, but by the imaginative. Nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dreams but facts, and facts are the creations of imagining. If man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. Man and his past are one continuous structure. This structure contains all of the facts which have been conserved and still operate below the threshold of his surface mind. For him, it is merely history. For him, it seems unalterable, a dead and permanently fixed past. But for itself, it is living. It is part of the living age. We cannot leave behind us the mistakes of our past, for nothing disappears. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists, and it gives and still gives its results. Man must go back in memory, seek for and destroy the causes of evil, however far back they lie. This going into the past and replaying a scene of the past in imagination as it ought to have been played the first time, I call revision. And revision results in repeal. Changing our lives means changing the past. The causes of the present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past. The past and the present form the whole structure of man. It is carrying all of its contents with it. Any alteration of content will result in an alteration in the present and future. Live nobly, so that mind can store a past well worthy of recall. Should you fail to do so, remember, the first act of correction or cure is always revise. If the past is recreated into the present, so will the revised past be recreated into the present. Or else, the promise that though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow, is a lie. The question may arise as to how, by representing others to ourselves as better than they really were, or mentally rewriting a letter to make it conform to our wish, or by revising the scene of an accident, the interview with the employer, and so on, could change what seems to be the unalterable facts of the past. But remember my claims for imagining. Imagining creates reality. What it makes, it can unmake. It is not only conservative, building a life from images supplied by memory. It is also creatively transformative, altering a theme already in being. The parable of the unjust steward gives the answer to this question. We can alter our world by means of a certain illegal practice, by means of a falsification of the facts, that is, by means of a certain intentional alteration of that which we have experienced. And all this is done in one's own imagination. This is a form of falsehood which not only is not condemned, but is actually approved in the gospel teaching. By means of such a falsehood, a man destroys the causes of evil and acquires friends. And on the strength of this revision, proves, judging by the high praise the unjust steward received from his master, that he is deserving of confidence. Because imagining creates reality, we can carry revision to the extreme and revise a scene that would be otherwise unforgivable. We learn to distinguish between man, who is all imagination, from those states into which he may enter. An unjust steward, looking at another's distress, will represent the other to himself as he ought to be seen. Were he himself in need, he would, like the man on the cover of this record, enter his dream house in his imagination and imagine what he would see and how things would seem and how people would act after these things should be. Then in this state, he would fall asleep, feeling the way he would expect to feel under such circumstances. Would that all the Lord's people were unjust stewards, mentally falsifying the facts of life to deliver individuals forevermore. For the imaginal change goes forward until at length the altered pattern is realized on the heights of attainment. Our future is our imaginal activity in its creative march. Imagine better than the best you know.
So I leave it to you to choose what you want to be in this world. You can be. So faith is simply an act, just an act, which negates all activity. So a lady said to me tonight, well, what must I do, Neville? You said that you will hear good news for me, and she named the kind of news she wanted me to hear. Now, what must I do? Well, I repeated to her. I thought I made myself clear when I spoke to her 2 weeks ago. You do nothing. You arise under compulsion to do what you'll have to do to bring it to pass, but you do not plot and plan anything. You yield completely. You said you believe in me. You believe that I can pray successfully. But all I do, when I heard your request, I simply asked you, is it within the framework of the golden rule? Is it something that you would like others to do to you? If it fits the golden rule, ask it of me. If it doesn't fit the golden rule, do not ask it of me, because I cannot be interested. Do not ask me to take from the people who own this building, their building, for your individual personal gain. I'm not interested. If you would like a building similar or even greater, all well and good. Nothing wrong with that. But don't ask me to do for you that which you would not like to be done for you. Do for you what you would not really like in your own life. I can't do it. Take from you one that you love, then would you take from another what she or he loves? That's not in my framework of the golden rule. But I've gone to so many weddings of those who said either that one or no one, and it wasn't that one at all. A little embarrassed when they walked down the aisle and saw me sitting, because I said, you really want to be happily married. You want to be blissfully happy, happily married. And you said, it must be that one or none. Well, I went to the weddings and it wasn't that one. So they were married. So I cannot for one moment limit it to any individual. So I said to many of them, I said, if he or she dropped dead right now, would you still want to be happily married? It never occurred to them that people are going to die, you know. All these things happen. So I said, tell me honestly, what do you want? And then try to put it within the framework of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And use this technique.
Isn't it wonderful? There is another technique I gave you last night. If you cannot concentrate on an act, if you cannot snuggle into your chair and believe the chair is elsewhere, just as though elsewhere were here, then do this. Reduce the idea. Condense it to a single simple phrase, like "Isn't it wonderful?" or "Thank you," or "It's done," or "It's finished." There should not be more than 3 words. Something that implies the desire is already realized. Isn't it wonderful? Or "Thank you." Certainly imply that. These are not all the phrases you could use. You can make up out of your own vocabulary the phrase which best suits you. But make it very, very short, and always use a phrase that implies fulfillment of the idea. When you have your phrase in mind, lift the cloud. Let the cloud ascend by simply inducing the state that borders on sleep. Simply begin to imagine and feel you are sleepy, and in this state, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Then repeat the phrases over and over, like a lullaby. Whatever the phrase is, let it imply that the assumption is true, that it is concrete, that it is already a fact, and you know it.
When God is born within you, for that's the beginning of it all, you first awaken within you, and you do not know you are God. You only know that you have awakened from the most profound sleep ever, and it seemed like eternity. You did not awake on the bed where you fell asleep the night before. You awoke in a tomb, and the tomb is your skull. And you awake within your skull, and you are all alone. There's no one present. But you have a built-in innate knowledge what to do, and you do it, and you come out of your skull as a child comes out of the womb of woman. But you're coming out of your own skull, and you pull yourself out of your own skull. God actually took upon himself the limit of contraction, which is man. Now he is born, the birth being an expansion. There is no limit to expansion. God is forever expanding. And then, at a moment of expansion, he then has a new venture of contraction. Then he expands beyond what he was. Then he contracts. Then he expands beyond what he was. And that is God's play. There is no limit to expansion. He puts a limit to contraction. The limit here is man. So when you break the tomb, you come out and you are God. So when he said to me, I laid myself down within you to sleep, who said that? The depth of my own soul. The Lord said that. I laid myself down within you to sleep, and as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and I knew exactly what he was dreaming. He's dreaming that he's I. And when the dream is over, we aren't two, we are one. No longer will he simply treat me as something on the outside, an emanation of his. No more the emanation. He cleaves to me, and we become one being. So a man leaves his world, his father, his mother, everyone, and cleaves to his wife. And this is the wife, the emanation of God. Yet, though his emanation, it's his wife until the dream is over. When the sleep is over, we aren't two, we are one. And I know that when I awoke within me, I wonder, how did I get here? Who put me here? For this is the tomb. This is a sepulchre.
And only one who thought me dead could have put me here, for this is a tomb, and only the dead are placed in tombs. So someone, I didn't realize then that it was a deliberate act on my own part. I lay it down myself. I have the power to lay it down and the power to take it up again. For I am the resurrection and the life. So he entered death's door, the human skull, and laid down in the grave of man. And there he dreams the dream of life. And this is the dream of life. And one day, it comes to the end. And he awakes where? In the tomb where he entered, to find himself there. It was a long dream. Thousands and thousands of years he's been dreaming this dream. You didn't begin in your mother's womb 70 years ago, or whatever year you may be. That's only a garment woven for you. You are eternal. You have no beginning and you have no end. Never was there a time when you were not, nor shall there ever come a time when you shall cease to be. Beginning and ends are all dreams. It seems so real, but they're all dreams. But you have no beginning, no end. And when it happens in you, well, what a joy. I can't tell anyone the emotion that possesses you, and then you really are like one possessed. You walk in the dream of what happened, and you cannot think of anything but, really. You may be diverted for a little while. A small party, a big one would bore you. A few friends, yes. A large crowd, no. It doesn't interest you. A dinner party of a few chosen friends, yes. But to have an enormous crowd, no, that's nothing more than noise. Everyone's trying to, well, monopolize the entire picture. But a few chosen friends for a party, a delightful evening with words, where you're discussing reality. Wonderful. But after it happens to you, may I tell you, you can't think of anything but, and your dreams are not dreams anymore. Your nights are not what they were prior to that waking. You wake and it's entirely different. And I can't explain to anyone who wakes every day of their life after a night of good sleep that waking in the morning doesn't compare to this. It's something entirely different. As though you had never awakened before in your life. That's what actually you feel like. Something entirely different. But something was said to me just before I took the platform by a very dear friend of mine who was here tonight. Although he will admit to me and to everyone in the world, he is 101% American, but he cannot deny the fact that he has 101% of the Irish background in him too. So he gave me the definition of an Irishman. An Irishman is one who does not know what he wants. And there'll be no peace on earth until he finds it. Not exactly his words, he told it much better than that. But that's the essence of it. He does not know what he wants, and there'll be no peace on earth until he finds it. Well, that's the whole vast world. Asking, what do you want? He doesn't really know what he wants, because what everyone wants is to find the Father. And you can't find the Father without the Son. Basically, we're trying to find the cause of the phenomena of life. What makes things happen in my world? He told me, years ago, long before he met me, he had these sort of daydreams of, talking to a crowd. Maybe going on radio, maybe on TV. Here out of the blue, someone came into his restaurant in Ojai and offered him a series of lectures here in New Mexico. Possibly to send him into Arizona. She can arrange other things for him. And the whole thing is done. But he remembered these daydreams. Most of us don't remember. And when we are confronted with our own harvest, we deny it's our harvest. So I tell you, there is no such thing as an accident in this world. No. There is no such thing as a natural cause. Every natural effect has a spiritual cause. That is an imaginal cause and not a natural. A natural only seems. It is a delusion of our fading memories. We can't remember when we set it in motion. He remembers that long before he met me in San Francisco, that this happened back east, this daydream of his. And now, suddenly, out of the nowhere, a seeming stranger comes into his world. Listening to him in his restaurant, carried away with what he had to say, the way he said it, is moved to arrange this thing for him. He doesn't have to lift a finger to do it. It all will be done for him. So I say, dream noble dreams. Wonderful dreams. If they don't come to pass tonight, tomorrow, or next week, you keep on dreaming them. But try to put yourself into the dream as though it's taking place. And try to live in it. Be possessed by the dream. And see the whole thing unfold within you in this world of Caesar. Always bearing in mind the real dream. It must come to an end only when it's fulfilled. And the story is the fulfillment when you awake. For resurrection is waking. It's not gathering dead bones together and putting flesh on it. It's simply awakening. You are sound asleep and you awaken like a man out of a deep, deep sleep to find yourself in a tomb. But you have the strength to break the bonds of that tomb and to come out of that tomb. And when they come to search for the body, they've taken away the body. They only knew you by reason of the body that you wore, and that's taken away. They can't see you. Him they could not see. But he was fully aware of everyone round about him, in spite of all the pain you've gone through and all the horrors of the world. For this is a nightmare. Can't confine it only to the night. It's a daymare too, with most people. So I tell you, at the end, it's not a reward, it's simply victory. You had plotted and planned the whole thing before you entered the tomb. You prepared a way for your own return to whom? To yourself. I came out from the Father, and I came into the world. Again, I am leaving the world, and I'm returning to the Father. And that's the story of this week. So as far as Friday goes, Good Friday, save your tears. The crucifixion is over. And it was a voluntary act on your part, which is God's part. You laid yourself down in a tomb for the purpose of dreaming the dream of life. And in that dream, you suffered. You knew you would. As you're told in the 24th chapter of the book of Luke, again you're told it in the 18th for that matter, but the 24th. O foolish men and slow of heart to understand all that the prophets have written and said about the Christ. Was it not necessary that Christ suffer these things and then enter into his glory? It's part of the training. These are the furnaces. Now let us go into the silence.
And when you say I am, you are all imagination. You cannot stick imagination on the outside and point to it. So you do not observe it as you observe the fruit of imagining. You do not observe imagination as you do objects in space, because you are the reality that is called imagination. This is what we teach here night after night. Now you can test it. What would the feeling be like if it were true that I am now the man that I would like to be? What would the feeling be like? Catch the mood. For the mood determines the fortunes of people rather than the fortunes determine the mood. Man puts it just the opposite. If I had $1 million, he said,
Oh, I would feel so good. Now, feel as you would if you had it. Catch the mood, and the mood will create that objective hope, if that is your hope. What would the feeling be like if you are now the person you want to be? And catch that mood. And wear that mood as you would a suit of clothes. And that mood will actually create an objective state that reflects that mood. That's what she did. She put herself into a mood, actually feeling that she was reading a story of her friend. And here it came. It's a complete spread, 2 full pages, all about this man. And then a little news bulletin on the radio. And then confirmation from him, and a telephone call from his wife, confirming the news bulletin, that they're all back on their job, and here now, as he said, for years, after 27 years. I walked through that plant, and I thought I'd go crazy. I wanted to climb the wall because of the noise. When I heard the hammers, and the bellows, and the furnaces, and all these thousands of workmen, that constant din, I wanted to climb the wall. Now, after 4,000 were let out, my footsteps echoed through the entire area. I would like to run and scream, running towards my office. What he does in the plant, I do not know. But if he goes towards his office, undoubtedly he has an executive position in that place and is not working at the furnaces. But he said, you can't imagine when 4,000 were let out, how empty the place was. And everything simply echoed. And my footsteps seemed like some thunderous thing as I walked through that plant towards my office. And many a moment I wanted to simply jump up and start running. It seemed so empty. She said, all right, that's something. I will remember when. And she applied that technique. When your footsteps scared you and you wanted to run towards the office. Now it's the clangor all over again. So I tell you, I know from my own experience that these moods, you catch a mood, I could tell from the mood that possessed me through the day that I would meet a certain character. And I met that character. It may be someone I knew or some total stranger, but I could tell from the very mood that possessed me that I'm drawing into my world an affinity with that mood. You can catch a mood and create the world that is in harmony with the mood. Anyone can do it. In fact, you're doing it morning, noon, and night anyway. So when you turn to some external God, you are turning to a false God. There is no external God. Every child born of woman is God incarnate. If man only knew that, there could be no war in the world. Killing man is killing God. For every child born of woman is the incarnation of God. Whether you be black, yellow, pink, white, or any other color, there is no other being in this world but God. So the incarnation takes place every time a little child is born and it breathes and you spank it to get it to cry. That moment was the incarnation of God. Now, how can you kill him? How can you hurt him? Just teach him and show him what power is latent within him. For the whole vast world aches for the awakening of the imagination in man. But here tonight, let us keep it on this level. And on this level tonight, when you dream of some wonderful objective in this world that is not yet realized, realize who the dreamer is. And the dreamer is God. And by dreamer, I mean your own wonderful imagination now. A daydream. That's God. That's God in action. Now, do not let your reason and your senses dictate what is possible. All things are possible to God. So suspend for a moment your reason. Suspend the senses that are dictating what you must accept. For their demanding of you, accept the facts of life. All right? If you could accept the facts of life and let reason dictate it, you'll never go beyond where you are.
Listen carefully to this promise. It's taken from the first chapter, the third verse of the book of Joshua. Here it is. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you. Do you believe it? Well, I know it's true. I have proven. But this promise is made not to be out of you. It's made to be in you. Maybe you're not even aware that there is an inner you, a real you. In the New Testament, it's put in this manner. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned. We are told the first man, that is the outer man, is of the earth, earthly. The inner man, the second man, is the Lord from heaven. Now this book from which I read the quote is the book of Joshua. The word Jesus is the Greek form of the word Joshua. They are identical in meaning. They mean literally to say, there is a Savior in man. And all the promises of the Bible are addressed to that inner man, that second man, that is the Lord from heaven. Not the outer man. The outer man is limited to the evidence of his senses. He is limited to what reason allows, what it dictates. But the inner man has no limitation. Every place that the sole of his foot shall tread upon, the same give I unto you. Now let me show you how it's done. For I was confronted with what seemed at the time to be an enormous problem, an impassable barrier between myself and my objective. I hadn't seen my family in Barbados for the entire war year. So the first ship out of New York City that sailed for the Indies, after the war was over, I sailed with my little family for Barbados. We took a boat that took us to Trinidad, and from there we flew to Barbados. On arrival, my brother asked me when I intended returning to America. Well, this was early January. I said, we are home after so many years. I would like to remain to maybe the end of April and return around the 1st of May. Then said he to me, of course you arranged your return while you were in America. I said, no, I didn't. He said, Neville, how could you have left America, that is the capital of the world? Everything goes on there, especially in New York City. And if any passage could be arranged, certainly it should have been done in New York City. Do you realize that there are literally thousands, tens of thousands of people waiting all through the island for passage to America? And little Barbados has nothing to offer. There are only two ships that ply the waters. One sails out of Boston carrying 120 passengers, and one sails out of New York carrying only 60. And I am told that all space, all available space is already committed right through the month of September. And here it is January. Not only the space is committed, but there are actually thousands of people waiting on a waiting list. If you put your name down with your family or three, you are at the bottom of the list. It will take 2 years to get out of there. I didn't tell him what I'm telling you now. I didn't wish to disturb him because he didn't know or was not familiar with this technique. I made no effort to book passage. I simply put my name, yes, at the bottom of the list. But I wasn't concerned. It was January, and I am in Barbados for vacation. So I'm not really concerned and spoil my vacation about the lack of passage. I wanted to get back in New York City around the 1st of May. So this is what I did based upon this promise. At the very end of March, I saw the ship that sailed for New York, leaving the boat, leaving the bay. I had a good mental picture of what she looked like, a small one. So that day, as I returned to my hotel, after lunch, I sat in a nice easy chair in my room. And this is what I did. I knew that if the inner man could perform an action, that the outer man would be compelled to duplicate it. For whenever the action of the inner self corresponds to the action which the outer self must take to appease desire, that desire must be realized. So I made as lifelike and as living a representation as possible of what I would see and what I would do and what I would hear were I physically present on that ship. Well, I knew one thing I would have to do if I sailed. You see, in Barbados there is no deep water harbor. That is not as yet. So all passengers must take a small little ship, we call them tenders, like a little launch, and move off maybe a mile or maybe 3/4 of a mile to sea. Then your little ship is lashed alongside of the big ship, and a gangplank is lowered, and you walk up the gangplank. That's one act I would have to perform if I sailed on that boat. I could perform it as a visitor, but the emotion of someone who actually is sailing differs from the emotion of one who is only visiting, seeing a friend off. So I had to catch a sort of a mixed emotion, for it was a peculiar, sweet sadness. I was leaving a very wonderful and large family behind me that I had not seen in 6 years. Although I was returning to a home that I loved in New York City, I was happy to get back, or to be sailing, but I was sad at sailing, that sort of feeling that mixed together joy and woe. As the prophet says, joy and woe are woven fine, a garment for the soul divine. So I knew exactly what he meant, the experience of mixing these two emotions into something that was a sweet, sweet sadness. So, with fixing my mind what I would have to do, I, sitting in a chair like I'm sitting here, I first induced a dreamy state. And the reason for that is this. We are told in the book of Job, in a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men, and seeth their instruction. Well, I knew the one who would see it was within me, for God is in man, not on the outside of man. God in you is strong and mighty. So the one in me would have to be my own wonderful I am. That's the God in man, man's consciousness. And that in a man is his son, his only lovely begotten son, which is my imagination. So sitting in that chair, I induced a drowsy state. For this is one thing it does for us. That dreamy, drowsy state that borders upon sleep. But you induce it only to a certain extent. If you carry it too far, you go to sleep. And then you lose the control of the direction of your attention. That's something you must always maintain and be under your control, not the control of another. So I had to induce it, but only to a certain point. And just before I slept, I arrested that state. You may say that consciousness is likened to an ocean or to a tide. It ebbs and it flows. The ebb tide is this very moment, when my critical faculties are being exercised. I know exactly where I am seated in the studio and what I'm doing. That is not the state of the flood tide, when I do not know what I'm doing, which is the unconsciousness of sleep. But between these two extremes, of the flood tide of unconsciousness in sleep, and the ebb tide, when all the critical faculties are being exercised, there are any number of intermediary states between these two extremes. I wanted a state that borders upon sleep. So because I'm speaking of a tide, I will call that now the high tide. This high tide lifts a man easily off the bar of his senses, where he is so long laying stranded. So I was stranded on my senses, for they told me I couldn't get out of the island. All that I heard my brothers tell me, my father tell me, they confirmed my senses. So here I am stranded on the bar of my senses. But I knew I could lift myself off what they knew, and what my outer man knew, the critical faculties knew, and actually sail away to my place in New York City. So all I wanted to do was to perform an act, which action implied that I was sailing. With that clearly in my mind, I took myself in this chair, induced the drowsy state, and just before I lost control of the direction of my attention, I started the action in my imagination. And this was what I worked out. I felt that if I walked up the gangplank, and it seemed to me real, and then on the top of that ship, holding the rail, I could look back at the little town of Bridgetown, and have that feeling of sadness, and yet a sweet sadness, because I was happy that I was sailing. So I assumed I stepped off onto the gangplank, and then step after step right up the entire gangplank, making it as natural and as real as I possibly could. I gave every step all the solidity that I could muster, all the sensory vividness that I could actually bring to play upon that action. When I got to the top of the imaginary stairway, which is the gangplank, I became aware that I had wandered from my task. For I had set myself a task to walk up the gangplank and only the gangplank. Then I found myself completely gone. I was not on a ship. When I became aware that I had simply floated away from my objective, I brought myself back to the very first step on that gangplank. And there I went over and over again. I did it over and over and over until that action took on the tones of reality. When it seemed to me normal and naturally real, I then felt I was actually performing it in the right way. So I kept on doing it, and then I went sound asleep in the act of walking up the gangplank. This was on a Thursday afternoon, I would say about 2:30 to 3. The next morning, Friday, at 10:35, the Alcor Steamship Company called me and offered me passage on the next sailing, which was the 21st day of April, putting me back in New York City on the 1st of May. And so I know from my own personal experience that this thing is true, that every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, the same give I unto you. If you could now conceive of what you would do, were you in possession of what you want to be in this world, and then having conceived it so that it's clear to you, a vivid representation of exactly what you would see and do and touch, well then, do it. Do it over and over until it seems to you real. And while you are doing it, in that dreamy, drowsy state, allow yourself to slip into the deep of sleep in the act of doing it. When you wake the next day or 5 minutes later, in my case, I woke maybe half an hour later. I was inwardly rehearsed in what would take place. All the people who played their parts, the steamship agents and all the people who did it on the ship, they were bystanders in my scene. I made my scene so real, and because of their physical presence, they became related to my scene. And because they were related to it, they were drawn into my drama and had to play their part. I didn't think of the captain's name or the steward's name or any person on the ship who might be sailing as a passenger. I didn't concern myself with how it would happen. I knew it would have to happen. And in less than 24 hours, I had confirmation of my passage as I saw it, as an outer man seeking and couldn't find it. But the inner man can find it. This is based upon this simple principle, that whenever the action of the inner man corresponds to the action which the outer man must take to, I would say, realize his dream or to appease his hunger, that must be done in the outer world. I know it. So when I returned to New York City, I told my experience to my audiences at Town Hall. A man present said to himself, he didn't say to me, he said to himself, I'm going to disprove this principle. I'm going to do it tonight. And this is what he did. He hadn't climbed the ladder in years. There was no occasion for it. But that night, because he had never climbed that, not never, but he hadn't climbed it in years, he thought he would do that, for there was no occasion for climbing a ladder. So he sat in his easy chair, and he took this imaginary ladder, and up he climbed the ladder. He did it over and over, climbing a ladder, until he went sound asleep in the act of climbing up a ladder. 4 days later, he visited a friend he hadn't seen in years. And she asked him, as a gentleman, if he would mind climbing a ladder and rearranging a picture beyond her reach. He didn't realize what actually took place until he was on the very top of the ladder. And he told me afterwards, when it dawned upon him that he had proven the principle, he became so emotional he almost fell off. Now don't you try to disprove it. Don't climb a little ladder in the hope to disprove it. You won't disprove it. Rather, put yourself into some big, noble state. Be a wonderful man, a wonderful woman, whoever you are, dream nobly. Construct a little drama which implies the fulfillment of your dream, and then do it over and over and over and make it natural. And I promise you, wherever the sole of your foot shall tread, the same give I unto you outward. Now, after a moment from my sponsor, I'll be back with an incident by far the most interesting case history I could tell you this day. As I've told you, these promises are made to the outer man, not in something that he himself must do. He doesn't do it, he hears it outside, but he must tell it to the inner man, and the inner man must do it. I told the story you've just heard in San Francisco. A blind girl was in my audience, and she was faced with this problem. Although blind, she was earning a wonderful, wonderful income, and of all things, a typist. But they had recently changed the routing of the buses, and she found herself spending 2.5 hours one way on 3 buses. For being blind, I tell you now, when you say blind, her eyes are removed. They are little plastic eyes when you look into her eyes. She had removed them years and years ago. So, in her predicament, getting off one bus, she must wait and hope that someone is passing by, seeing her limitation, and help her across the street. So she propped herself, and after 2 weeks, she could not make it in less than 2.5 hours. And in previous days, when she had only one bus to take, she made it in 15 minutes. So that night, this is what she did. She sat in her living room, and she first of all investigated what it would cost by taxi. That was completely out of the question. She thought in terms of giving up her apartment, but she had a long lease on it. For all the things that she thought of rashly, she couldn't put into effect. She came to the conclusion that going from her place to the place of work in a car was the only solution. She couldn't afford a chauffeur, and she couldn't buy, for she was blind. But a car seemed to her the only solution. So this is what she did. Sitting in her living room in a nice easy chair, she assumed that she was seated on the front seat of a car. She felt that the person next to her was a man. She could always feel his cleavage. Then she felt the rhythm of the car. Then she could smell the gasoline. Then she felt the car move. She felt it stop against what she thought to be a red light. Then she felt the car move on. She finally came to the end of her imaginary journey. She turned to her companion and said, "Thank you very much, sir." To which he replied, "The pleasure is all mine." She got out of that car, and then she imagined she heard the car click as she slammed in her imagination the door of the car. And then she walked up the plank, leading to her office. The next night, she did it all over again. She did it until it seemed to her she was actually on a car. She could actually see herself on a car and riding down the streets of San Francisco, stopping in front of her office building, getting out, thanking her passenger, or rather her driver, and then making her way up the ramp. The second night, right after she had done it and given it the tones of reality, her companion read her the evening paper. And there in the evening paper was the picture of a man who was interested in blind people. Having read the article, she thought she would call him. She looked his name up in the telephone directory and found his name and called him. He said if he was interested in the blind, as said in the paper, but this was no time or place to call him. If she would write him a long, detailed letter of the nature of her problem, he would take it under consideration. She sat down and wrote him a letter and explained her problem, simply a problem of transportation. Next day, when he got the letter, he simply read it and put it in his pocket. On his way home, he stopped in at a place where he stopped every day before returning to his home. And that happened to be a bar. So he stopped in at a bar. He knew the proprietor and had his little martini, whatever he had. And while he was there, he was prompted to tell the blind girl's story. Having told the story, a total stranger between the two of them, because the other one was a salesman for some liquor house, he overheard the story. And he said, well, I make a good living, I employ dozens under me, and I do nothing for this community. Here was a girl who not only is taking herself off the backs of taxpayers, but in her letter she states that she is training 9 other blind people to earn their own living. Here this girl, who should be supported by the taxpayers, earns her own living, and she's taught 10 others, rather 9 others, to earn their living. And I, who earn a wonderful living, I do nothing for the community. I will drive that girl to work. The man who received the letter said, if you, a total stranger, will drive her to work, I, who am interested in the blind, and make it my job, I will then take her home. And that was a bargain. Now, that's almost 3 years ago. I saw that girl just about 6 months ago. And she told me that it is not sale 1 day or a 5-day week. 5 days a week, these gentlemen pick her up and take her to her work and take her from work home. And here's the strange part. The very first morning that she drove with one of these men, she turned to him as she got out of the car, and she said, thank you very much, sir. To which he replied, the pleasure is all mine. The identical words that she in her imagination had used to make the thing seem natural were used the very first day. Now, twice she did it. On the third day, she was being driven to work. I say to you, if she can do it, and if the speaker can do it, you can do it. I have done it a number of times, and I teach others to do it. It's a simple technique. You must learn to believe in the inner man and the reality of what is to you at the moment an invisible presence. This invisible world is not really unreal. It's the most real world imaginable. And the inner man relating to it is a far more real being than the outer personality that you came to and think so much in this world. Trust. These things will never fail. Whenever the action of the inner you corresponds to the action which the outer you must take to appease your desire, that desire will be realized. For this whole wonderful world of ours is nothing more than the appeasement of hunger. That's why you built it. We made it to satisfy our longing. You have some intense longing, some wonderful hunger in this world. It may be for a job. It may be an increase of income. It may be some wonderful harmonious relationship in a home that is now strained. No matter what it is, construct a little action. This action implies that your dream has been realized. Then take that action and inwardly do it over and over and over until it takes on the tones of reality. When to you it seems natural, then you may sleep. But I do believe in that sleeping during the action. In some strange way, it seems to hasten the interval between the doing and the realization of it. Of course, you don't have to sleep. But I have found some experience that if I can fall asleep while I'm performing the action which implies the fulfillment of my dream, that I quickly collapse the time. In Little Barbados, it took me less than 1 day to have passage on a ship, although the ship was not sailing for another 21 days. Still, I knew I was going to sail on that ship. I had tangible proof. I had the passage in my possession. This girl took really 2 days. Although she was driven on the 3rd day, she really only did it 2 nights. 2 nights sitting in a living room, she assumed she was on a car. She could smell the gasoline. She took all of her senses and hallucinated them. You could hallucinate sight, smell, touch. I can take my hand now, place on this book, and assume that I am pondering something that is not here to be seen by anyone, and so lose myself in it. That to me it seems natural. If I do it until it seems natural and sleep while I'm doing, do you know it will become my possession? That's how everyone should live, and really eventually live in this world. So instead of going out and simply getting things that are not yours, or I would say killing in order to survive, you don't kill to survive in this technique. You die in order to live. You let go of the things that you have kept alive, just drop them, and you simply inwardly feel yourself into another state, and feeling yourself right into the situation of your fulfilled desire, you sleep in that state. And so you'll know the wisdom of the word. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. We are rehearsed this night in the part we're going to play when we open our eyes on this outer world. And all that we will do, we do under compulsion. For this inner motion is the force by which the outer event is brought to pass. If you know it, then don't just know it, do it. For if you do it, I promise you, you will get the result. But you must apply. Application is important. Everyone in this world must learn to live by their imagination. And only as you live by imagination can we truly be said to live at all. Now here, in this book of mine, Awakened Imagination, you will find that case history of the blind girl. Read it and apply it and become the man, the woman that you want to be. You can be anything in this world that you want to be. If you know these wonderful promises, accept them and then test them. You're invited to test them. Come prove me now and see if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing so great there is not room on earth to receive it. You can conceive of the impossible state, impossible to the inner man. All things are possible to the inner man. Now I'll be back in just a moment with just a thought for today. Today is to remind you that every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon has been given unto you. Goodbye, and thank you.
So tonight we will show you what I have done in the past with great success. and how it operates. Now, if I wanted something in this world, and who doesn't, I would formulate an act which would imply that I have it. And then in my imagination, I would simply, having performed that act, I would yield completely to this being within me to execute it. I would fall off into sleep, convinced that he heard me, that he saw my act in faith. I simply yield completely to him, having acted. It's an act of self-commission. I perform the act. What act? I act as though I had what I sought. I act as though I heard that you have what you asked of me. I perform an act, and then I yield completely to that depth of my own being, who is God, and allow him from that depth to externalize it for me. All I have to do is to completely yield to this being within me, for he has ways and means I, on this level of my being, know not of. I rise then under compulsion. And under this compulsion, I go through a series of events which will lead up to the fulfillment of that to which I yielded. I assume that it's done. And then I commune with myself and gave thanks within me that it is done. And it works in every way. You want to be, and you name it. You want to be successful in the world of Caesar, in dollars and cents, nothing wrong with it. You want to be a successful doctor, successful lawyer, I don't care what it is. You want to be, well then formulate in your mind's eye what it would be like if it were true. How would you see the world if you were now the man that you would like to be? See it in your mind's eye, and then yield yourself completely to the depth of your own being. How do I do that? Simply fall asleep in the assumption. I dare to assume that I am the man that at the moment reason denies, and then fall asleep in that assumption, leaving it completely to the depth of my own being to externalize it in my world. I will wake tomorrow morning under compulsion to do certain things which I had not formulated, I hadn't determined. I'll find I'll meet the right people. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. And it all adds up towards the externalization of my assumption. So within you is that power, within you is that wisdom, to do anything that you desire in this world. So this is the faith of which I speak. How do I do it? You can sit right here. And you go to bed at night, as you're told in the 4th Psalm. Commune with your own self upon your bed and be silent. You don't commune with another, you commune with your own self. That's God. For the self of man is God. When you say I am, that's God. There is no other God. But you don't see him now. He has become invisible. The darkest night in the world was when God became invisible. He told the story to all of us before we set forth. Then he became invisible and took up his residence in us. He became invisible. And in us he is I am, my own wonderful human imagination. That's God. So I don't see my imagination as I see objects in space. For imagination is the reality that is causing these objects in space. So I see the fruits of its activity, but I do not see it because it is invisible. The day will come, I will see it. I have seen him. He has no beginning, no end. He is the Ancient of Days. But he's infinite love. There's nothing but love. Yet he will wait on us just as swiftly and as indifferently when the will in us is evil as when it is good. For it is he who does all things, that I kill, I make alive. I wound, I heal. I do all these things, and none can deliver out of my hand. So if the will in man is evil, he will execute it. If it is good, he will execute it, because there is no other creator. So it's entirely up to man what he imagines. What am I going to imagine? But remember, when I imagine, I must imagine and then completely yield. That is faith. You've been taught to believe you're a worm. You came out of a swamp. And then suddenly you became a tadpole. Then you became something else. And finally you find yourself a man. Forget it. You are the gods who came down from heaven and assumed the restriction, the limitation of man. This is the limit of contraction, and you assumed it. And you're going to fulfill a definite purpose in man. And while you walk the earth as man, that predetermined plan will erupt within you, and the whole thing will unfold within you, beginning with the resurrection. The resurrection did not take place in the Near East, in some little place where they're looking for it now. It takes place in man. Man is where God is buried. The Holy Sepulchre is the skull of man. It's not in the Near East. The Bethlehem that they're talking about is in the skull of man. Zion, his holy place where he dwells, that's the skull of man. And the whole drama unfolds within man. And man awakens within himself to find himself completely sealed within his skull. And he comes out like a child being born out of his own skull. And then, a few months later, comes an explosion in his skull, and that compartment that contained the Son of God, who was his will, who was his wisdom, releases the Son. You would not let my soul remain in hell, said he, in the 16th Psalm. So he brings him up, he resurrects his son, and the son is David. And David, looking at the Father, and the Father for the first time knows who he is. Memory returns. And the Father, the Son was the one who revealed him to himself. So the whole drama unfolds within man, and the whole thing is contained within the skull of man. Has nothing to do with anything on the outside. They're looking in vain, all the archaeologists, and they bring back all this nonsense. You are the Lord Jesus Christ. There is nothing outside of man. The whole drama takes place within man. It has nothing to do with anything outside. You're living in a world of shadows, and the drama is within. So let us now get back to this simple approach of faith. Do you know what you want, either for yourself or for another? Construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your dream. Just construct it. Enter into it just as though it were true. Feel what it would feel like if it were true. And give thanks to the one who is going to execute it. It's your own being, I grant you, but he is the depth of your own being. He is the Father. You haven't yet found him, but he is the Father. And you are now on the surface of your being. So fall asleep in the conviction that things are as you desire them to be, in confidence that he will execute it. I use the word he, it's yourself. But for clarity's sake, I say he, because you're not aware of him as yet. You will be one day. Everyone will be aware of that being. And because that being has one Son, and that one Son is the Son of all, we are one. There's only one. There aren't millions of gods, only one God. But the one God is made up of a brotherhood. And we are the brothers, raising ourselves to the level of the one God. But I've been sent to tell you this, and tell you I will and must. If only a few hear it, what does it matter? You hear it with conviction. Because I tell you the truth, it will last. I am not here to set up some little ism. I am not here to speculate and try to set up some little philosophical setup that may work. No. I want no church, no ism. Just to tell you who you are. And you will tell it to others, and others will tell it, because in the end you're going to prove it to be true. You can't rub it out because it is true. All that I have told you is true. I'm not speculating. I'm not theorizing. I stood in the presence of the infinite being and his infinite love, and he embraced me. And he sent me after he embraced me. Therefore love embraced me. Therefore guided by love, we became one body. People are misled morning, noon, and night by so-called holy men. Forget it. Man comes to you telling you he's a holy person, turn around and start running. All these holy fellows, they just simply meet you and meet another crowd, and next thing they do, they run to the bank with what was in your pocket. Picked up one fellow here, he's flying off to Switzerland. He was in Spain after having collected a fortune. They found $300,000 of him, on him. And he was at the Maharishi that came up through this country. It wasn't the Maharishi, it was his secretary running off to Switzerland, where you'd put it into your Swiss bank. And all the people fall for it morning, noon, and night. And so if you take Noah, you hate to hear it, because people hate to know that others know they were beguiled. And so those who gave their fortunes to him, $500 to teach them how to meditate about the nonsense in the world. Teach you how to meditate? It's just a simple, simple thing. You don't meditate on your navel. You don't meditate on any of these things whatsoever. You know what you want? What would the feeling be like if it were true? What would it be like? Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Well, anyone can do that. A child can do that. What would it be like if it were true? That's meditating. Now yield completely. And the being within you will take that and externalize it for you. Meditating on your Kundalini fire and all this nonsense. Has nothing to do with it. I'm going into so-called diets. Diets will not commit you or commend you to God. He gave you a palate, didn't he? Or then exercise the palate too. And so I'm going to go on a certain diet. A friend of mine went on the diet of things that you should only feed parrots. Well, she isn't a parrot. Eating pumpkin seeds, eating all these things. If you really enjoy them, but don't tell me that you really enjoy them. Of course, you could acquire a taste for anything. I don't say you can't. But exercise that God-given gift. It's a palate. And simply enjoy it. So, to come down to the night's message on faith. By faith, the worlds were created by the Word of God. Faith does not give reality to the unseen things. Faith is loyalty to unseen reality. For this thing exists. All things exist. I tell you from my own experience that entire world that is unseen to this world exists now. It actually exists. Not out there beyond the stars, right here. It's all existing right here. And the day will come that you will actually awake and you'll be able to step into these unnumbered sections of time. 1,000 years ago has not passed away. And 2,000 years from now is not something that is going to suddenly form itself. It is now. And you are simply in a section of time. And the day will come you'll be able to move into any section of time. All these things exist now. And the purpose of it all is simply to awaken. And when you awaken, who are you? You are the author of it all. You are God. God the Creator. But to come back to our wonderful approach tonight, you want a better job? You want more money? You want this? You want that? Don't be ashamed of it. Who gave you the urge? The Father did. You have the desire. It came from the depths of your own being. So he can execute it. He only asks you to have faith. Faith in what? Faith in him. Have faith in God. All right. Where is he? He is my own wonderful human imagination. I cannot see the fulfillment now, but he will do it. Well now, assume that I am already the man that I want to be, and yield completely to that assumption, and fall asleep. Just completely fall asleep and completely forget it. A lady who is here tonight, she called me up on the phone here just a few days ago and asked something of me. I will not tell you, it's too personal. But she asked me to please care for a certain thing. It's so simple. I sat in my chair after I spoke to her on the phone and heard her tell me. But she came back tonight and told me that it has happened. She is here, she's seated here tonight. Drove all the way in from San Bernardino to tell me this story. And it simply worked. What did I do? It didn't cost me anything. Cost you nothing. What does it cost anyone to have faith in God? Why put a price on it? Why charge anyone? It costs nothing. It's not just to entertain an idea. What idea? The idea must produce in you this feeling, which is a sensation, but it must be a feeling. What would the feeling be like if it were true? You dwell upon that until you catch that feeling. As Churchill said, that the mood determines the fortunes of people, rather than the fortunes, the mood. The mood precedes the fortune. So what would you want in this world? Well, contemplate it. What would the feeling be like if you had it? What would it be like if it were true? You can do it. There is no flower in your hand, but you can feel the soft velvet feeling of a rose. You can smell a rose, though it's not physically present. Try it. Try all these things with the inner man. And when you can actually feel it so that you raise your imagination to the point of sensation, to vision, then the whole thing is done. It's done in a way you do not know it's going to happen. So tonight you want a bigger job, you want more money in this world, you want, and you name it. Well, then it may be a thief who is going to aid you in the getting without knowing he's doing it. Don't judge him, don't condemn him, just simply you go forward knowing that I have ways and means that the physical man knows not of. My ways, the inner man's ways, are past finding out. And you simply go forward in the assumption that you have already achieved what now is only a wish as far as the world is concerned. But you enter into the wish as though the wish is already fulfilled. So tonight is a practical night. Do you know this night what you want? Really what you want? Do what I did when I was locked out completely from marrying the girl I wanted to marry. I simply assumed that she stepped there, I stepped here, and I went sound to sleep, and in 1 week, my wife did an act which certainly I must forgive,
In the eyes of the world, she is condemned for taking what she did not pay for. And yet because of that act, I got my freedom. Then who is the culprit? Am I not? If there's any culprit, I am. If there is any culprit in this world, it is God. There is nothing but God. God is doing all in this world. He created everything in this world. And so if in me, he is the second man, and the second man is my imagination, and that is God. For man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Well, if I in my imagination slept as though I am happily married to a girl that the laws of New York State said I could never get because of my entanglement with my first wife, and in 1 week she performed an act which was judged harshly by society, and yet she was the instrument of my getting my freedom to marry the girl who now is the mother of my daughter. So how can I blame her who performed that act? She was in a state, and who did it? I did it. I did it by simply assuming that I was free and happily married to a girl that the state of New York said I could never marry because of the ancient laws that restricted my desire to get freedom in that state. So you forgive everyone in this world. They're all playing their part. So in my own case, I have seen thieves. I have seen all kinds of people play their part. They were instruments in the fulfillment of my desire. So how can I ever condemn all? So tonight, you just simply boldly declare that you are the man. You are the woman that you want to be. And walk in that assumption as though it were true. And then let all these sleeping states play their part. May I tell you, in spite of what they appear to be, they are sound asleep. For God plays all the parts in the world. There is nothing but God. And say, I am, that's God. That is the Lord Jesus within you. That is your immortal being that cannot die. He cannot die. That is your eternal self when you say, I am. Imagination is not some vague essence. It is a body, a reality, an infinite body that is so perfect when it's awakened, that in its presence everything is made perfect. But while it is awakening, it exercises that power and draws into its world everyone that can play the part for its fulfillment of its dream. So here, I hope you heard it clearly. I hope I made it as clear as I can, because tonight should be a very practical night. That you will go out knowing who you are. You are a dual being. But the first man is of the dust, and to dust he returns. That is the man of earth. The second man is the Lord from heaven, and he cannot die. That's your own wonderful human imagination. It cannot die. But it sleeps embodied in this tomb. And one day it will awaken. As I've told you in the past, the symbolism of Scripture will surround you. It's perfect. It is true. Everything told you in Scripture as to his birth, you are going to experience. And then your imagination awakens. And you trust no one but it. Only this being within you do you really worship. You are imprisoned by your present concept. You're not behind bars. You're going to go home tonight and sleep as the woman, as the man you really don't want to be. So you are in prison. Now look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere. Do not only be a hearer of what to do, do it.
and you will be blessed in the doing. That's what Scripture teaches. Go home and read it. I am not misquoting. I am quoting accurately from the Epistle of James in the New Testament. And this is the story that I'm trying to tell everyone in the world. He said, I am not in prison. No, you're not in prison. Not physically. But you are in prison. You may today need money. And you say, oh, I'm still not like the fellows who are behind in Sing Sing. All right, you're not behind jail doors, but you are still behind. Behind in rent, behind in this, and the dunning notes from all the places where you charge, you are behind bars. You can't seem to find the necessary sum to pay them. All right, look into the perfect law of liberty. That's the perfect law. Well, how do I do it? Rearrange the structure of your mind. The demagnetized piece of steel does not differ in substance from the magnetized, only the arrangement of its molecules. And then one lifts up enormous weights when it's completely one-pointed. When all these molecules face one direction, it's a powerhouse. The other is scattered. So let not the double-minded man think that he will in any way receive from the Lord, you're told. The same first chapter. If the double-minded man comes, who is unstable in all his ways, let he not think he will receive anything from the Lord. What can you give a man who doesn't know what he wants? I've gone into a restaurant just to prove this principle. Sat down, said to the waiter, what would you like for a tip? And he's embarrassed. I said to my friend, I'll give him what he wants. Within reason, I'm not going to give him any $100 bill, but I'll give him, if he said to me, a $5 bill. He didn't order that which warranted a $5 bill. And he was embarrassed and embarrassed and embarrassed. And all he expected was exactly what he got. He just didn't know. He just had no concept of putting something, of course he didn't know it, so how could he put it to the test? So I am telling you, you rearrange the structure of your mind. That's all you do. It doesn't differ from Einstein's mind. There's only one mind. There's only one God. There's only one Lord. Listen to it. One body, one spirit, one hope, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of us all, who is above all, through all, and in all. If he's in you, that's the same one with the one body, the one spirit. So I'm not using a different mind. It's the same mind, but differently arranged. Go into one room and you see that someone doesn't know what to do with their furniture. Bring someone in who knows how to set a room. Come back an hour later after she's through with it, and you will think you're in an entirely different home. My wife used to pull that on me all the time. I'd come home and think I just stepped into the entirely strange apartment and wonder if I'm really at home. And she was hiding some other place. She had completely rearranged the structure of the furniture. It looked like an entirely different home. But she had that sense how to do it. And so she did it. So, with what you have, all you need is exactly what you have, for you have the mind of God. It's not a different mind, the same mind. And you simply rearrange the mind by a mere assumption. What would the feeling be like were it true? That I am now the man that I want to be. Now the woman that I want to be. But it's added, but persevere. You must persevere in it. If I call you now and you answer, it's one thing. Well, will you respond an hour later to the same call? Then if you persevere, you will. If now, an hour later, you think of yourself as you now, when you dare to assume that you are now the man that you want to be, an hour later, are you still assuming that state? If you're not persevering. You are the hearer who looked into the mirror with his natural face and he saw it. Then he went his way and at once forgot what he looked like. So if 1 hour from now you're not still assuming that you are the man that you want to be, you've forgotten. You are the hearer and not the doer. And he warns us of the vast difference between being a hearer and being a doer. The doer acts. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So bear in mind that your wonderful world is not bounded by your senses. You perceive far, far more than your sense, no matter how acute it is, could discover. Your senses can't discover what now you're capable of assuming that you are. Your senses dictate what reason will allow. And your reason and your senses are bound together. Go beyond it. For what you now know from experience, what you know from the past, will not be what you will know when you know more than you now know. But having done it and proven it, I know more than I did when I was bounded by my senses. When I couldn't get out of a certain island on time to meet a commitment in Milwaukee, I knew what I did in the army. I simply applied the identical thing, and I got out. When there was a long, long waiting list, thousands waiting for all the islands, and only 2 little ships, not big ships, 2 small little ships, one carrying not more than 60-odd passengers, and one carrying 120, and thousands waiting, and they only came once a month into the island. One every 32 days, and one every 3.5 weeks. How long would it take to get them all out? I didn't ask anyone a favor. Didn't ask my brother, who was a powerful businessman in the island. He criticized me for not arranging passage back to America when I left America. That's the place where you should have done it. That's the powerhouse of the world, New York City. That's where all these things are done. And you dare to leave New York City when you could have arranged a round trip, and you come here on a one-way ticket? Well, I didn't ask any favors of him or any favors of any member of the family. I simply did exactly what I did in the army. And in 24 hours, I was called by the Alcoa Company and given my passage over thousands who were waiting. Isn't my concern why she did it, or why someone else didn't get it in preference to mine, and my name was down at the very bottom? I wasn't at the top. I'm at the bottom of the list. It isn't my concern. I look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and I persevered. I sat in a chair in my hotel room, and there I sat in the chair, and as soon I am next to the boat, I'm climbing up the gangplank. Just before we had a deep water harbor, so you had to go off to sea about maybe a half mile or a mile to sea on a little tender, and then take the gangplank and go up to the ship. So I felt myself bobbing as you would on the ocean, and then moving up the gangplank. I could smell the rawness of the sea. Got up to the top. If my mind wandered, I brought it back down again and did it all over again. It wandered, brought it back down again, kept on doing it over and over until finally I did it. I fell sound asleep sitting in the chair in the act of doing. Next day, Alcoa calls me and gives me my passage for my wife and my little girl. So I'm telling you from experience, it doesn't fail, but we must not simply be hearers of the word. We must be doers of the word. For if you are a hearer and not a doer, you deceive yourself, he tells you. For we are the operant power. This law doesn't operate itself. It doesn't care if you're good, bad, or indifferent. Look around the world. Who would think that tonight someone serving life sentence in our jail is the same mind that sits in the White House? Who would think the one who sits now in the Vatican, that mind of the Pope is the same mind of the one who is groveling on his belly, trying to kiss his hand? So on Sunday, there'll be Palm Sunday, and they'll do all these things on Palm Sunday, the holy palms. And then comes Friday, then comes Sunday, and all this will go on and have all the show, fabulous show. And he who is being born on the backs of strong, strapping men does not differ from those who are his slaves bearing him. The same mind, but they have rearranged their mind to be slaves. And he has arranged his mind to be the Father, to be Papa, the great Pope. Same mind. There is only one mind in the world. There aren't two minds. That's why I can tell you, I know that when he stands before you, he will know you as his Father. And you will know him as your Son. And because I know him as my Son, are we not one mind? Are we not one being? When the same being who called me Father will one day call you Father, are we not the same Father? The same mind, the same spirit, the same body, without loss of identity. So I'm telling you tonight, try it. Try it every moment of time. You know tonight what you want to be. I don't care what you want to be. It's simply a rearrangement of the mind. And you rearrange the mind not through any study and any effort. It's simply a mere assumption. What do I want to be? Get it clear in my mind's eye. Well, then assume that I am it. Listen to the words in the book of Joel. Let the weak man say, I am strong. Let the weak man say, I am strong. That's in the book of Joel. Jehovah God. That's what the word would mean, Joel. You're called upon when you are dumb to assume that you're exactly what you want to be. Not dumb because you don't want to be that. You want to be as free as the wind. Well, assume that you are. May I tell you in a way that no one knows you'll become it. But you must persevere. And the word perseverance is true. If I don't believe it, well then 1 second later, I've turned back to my former state and become once more Lot's wife, the pillar of salt. Salt is a preservative. In the old days, the only way to preserve something is to salt it. Not so long ago, when I was a little boy, we caught fish, an enormous quantity of fish, because we didn't have these enormous fleets catching our fish. So we had fish to burn, literally burn. If they didn't get in before, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what did they have? They could either put it onto the dung heap and make dung out of it, or clean it up and salt it. So they cleaned it up and salted it. It would keep indefinitely, for we had no refrigeration. So you salted the fish. Now we could have salt flying fish, if you wanted it that way. But fish that were not consumed by sundown was discarded. Use it for bait the next day, or use it in the dung heap and fertilize the fields with it. So salt is a preservative. So when Lot's wife was turned to salt, she turned back and went back to her former state. And that is all that it means. You look back and became a pillar of salt. You turned back to the state you said you would leave behind you. And looking back, you were salted. You were preserved in it. So turn away from what you really want to be. Turn back, you're going to be salted in it. So I ask you to leave what you are, unless you like what you are. There's portions of what you are today that you like. All right, wonderful. There are other portions that you do not like. Well, you don't have to give up everything in your living room when you rearrange the structure of it. Certain pieces that you'll keep. You may change this location, but you'll keep it. The same thing is true with the structure of the mind. You keep certain things and you let other things go. Take friends in your world who are not doing well, rearrange them in your mind's eye, and they're doing well. So put that part of the structure in your mind's eye. Rearrange the entire structure and dare to assume that it's true and walk in that assumption. And that assumption, though at the moment is denied by reason and denied by your senses, if you persevere in it, it will harden into fact. This is the law of Scripture, that I came not to abolish, but to fulfill the Jewish law and the Jewish prophets. For there was no other Scripture in the first century but the Jewish Scriptures. So the word Jew is not placed before it to qualify it, but the only Scripture that he knew. He came to fulfill the Jewish law. He reinterpreted the law psychologically and showed them exactly how it's done. So go out and do not abolish anything, simply fulfill it. Fulfill the law and fulfill the prophets. The prophets, when they're fulfilled, that's done by sheer grace. That comes. That comes by promise. And no one's going to stop it, may I tell you. But you could go on living in a state that you do not wish in this world. But in spite of that, you will still receive the promise, because it isn't given to the one who is rich and deny the one who is poor. But why remain poor and bat your head out morning, noon, and night against the inevitable blows in this world? I hope you do not wish money for the sake of money, but if you need money, well, then apply this law. What would the feeling be like if it were true that I was now free of this pressure, free of it? Dare to assume that you are, and then persist in that assumption, and that assumption will harden into reality. So this is my lesson tonight. I think you have found it a very practical one, but I must remind you, you can either be the hearer of what you heard tonight and not the doer. It is my hope that you will be the doer of what you heard tonight. And that when you leave here in the assumption, not wait until you get home. Leave here in the assumption that you are already the man, the woman that you want to be. And then between here and home, think of the man that you have assumed that you are, and let that assumption spring in your mind constantly. You are that man. Go to bed in that assumption. Maybe this night, as it did with me in the army, something will come, and a voice will speak, and when vision breaks forth into speech, the presence of deity is assured, and maybe you will have confirmation that what you have dared to assume is. I know in my case it came that way, but it will come whether it breaks forth into speech or not, if you persist in the assumption. It's not just to entertain an idea. What idea? The idea must produce in you this feeling, which is a sensation, but it must be a feeling. What would the feeling be like if it were true? You dwell upon that until you catch that feeling. As Churchill said, that the mood determines the fortunes of people, rather than the fortunes, the mood. The mood precedes the fortune. So what would you want in this world? Well, contemplate it. What would the feeling be like if you had it? What would it be like if it were true? You can do it. There is no flower in your hand, but you can feel the soft velvet feeling of a rose. You can smell a rose, though it's not physically present. Try it. Try all these things with the inner man. And when you can actually feel it, so that you raise your imagination to the point of sensation, to vision, then the whole thing is done. It's done in a way you do not know it's going to happen. So tonight you want a bigger job, you want more money in this world, you want, and you name it. Well, then it may be a thief who is going to aid you in the getting, without knowing he's doing it. Don't judge him, don't condemn him, just simply you go forward knowing that I have ways and means that the physical man knows not of. My ways, the inner man's ways, are past finding out. And you simply go forward in the assumption that you have already achieved what now is only a wish as far as the world is concerned. But you enter into the wish as though the wish is already fulfilled. So tonight is a practical night. Do you know this night what you want? Really what you want? Do what I did when I was locked out completely from marrying the girl I wanted to marry. I simply assumed that she slept there, I slept here, and I went sound to sleep, and in 1 week, my wife
did an act which certainly I must forgive. In the eyes of the world, she is condemned for taking what she did not pay for. And yet because of that act, I got my freedom. Then who is the culprit? Am I not? If there's any culprit, I am. If there is any culprit in this world, it is God. There is nothing but God. God is doing all in this world. He created everything in this world. And so if in me he is the second man, and the second man is my imagination, and that is God. For man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Well, if I in my imagination slept as though I am happily married to a girl that the laws of New York State said I could never get because of my entanglement with my first wife, and in 1 week she performed an act which was judged harshly by society, and yet she was the instrument of my getting my freedom to marry the girl who now is the mother of my daughter. So how can I blame her who performed that act? She was in a state, and who did it? I did it. I did it by simply assuming that I was free and happily married to a girl that the state of New York said I could never marry because of the ancient laws that restricted my desire to get freedom in that state. So you forgive everyone in this world. They're all playing their parts. So in my own case, I have seen thieves. I have seen all kinds of people play their part. They were instruments in the fulfillment of my desire. So how can I ever condemn all? So tonight you just simply boldly declare that you are the man. You are the woman that you want to be. And walk in that assumption as though it were true. And then let all these sleeping states play their part. May I tell you, in spite of what they appear to be, they are sound asleep. For God plays all the parts in the world. There is nothing but God. And say, I am, that's God. That is the Lord Jesus within you. That is your immortal being that cannot die. He cannot die. That is your eternal self when you say, I am. Imagination is not some vague essence. It is a body, a reality, an infinite body that is so perfect when it's awakened that in its presence everything is made perfect. But while it is awakening, it exercises that power and draws into its world everyone that can play the part for its fulfillment of its dream. So here, I hope you heard it clearly. I hope I made it as clear as I can, because tonight should be a very practical night. That you will go out knowing who you are. You are a dual being. But the first man is of the dust, and to dust he returns. That is the man of earth. The second man is the Lord from heaven, and he cannot die. That's your own wonderful human imagination. It cannot die. But it sleeps. It sleeps embodied in this tomb. And one day it will awaken. As I've told you in the past, the symbolism of Scripture will surround you. It's perfect. It is true. Everything told you in Scripture as to his birth, you are going to experience. And then your imagination awakens. And you trust no one but it. Only this being within you do you really worship.
It may seem incredible, but it is true. The world in which we live is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. All that we behold, though it appears without, it is within, in our imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. Therefore, the secret of imagining is the greatest of all problems, to the solution of which everyone should aspire. For supreme power, supreme wisdom, and supreme joy lie in the solution of this great mystery. When man solves the mystery of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation, and that is, imagining creates reality. Divine imagining and human imagining are not two powers at all, but one. The valid distinction which exists between them lies not in the substance with which they operate, but in the degree of intensity of the operant power itself. Acting at high tension, an imaginal act is an immediate objective fact. Keyed low, an imaginal act is realized in a time process. Human history, with its forms of governments, its revolutions, its wars, and in fact the rise and fall of nations, could be written in terms of the imaginal activities of men and women. All imaginative men and women are forever casting forth enchantments, and all passive men and women who have no powerful imaginative lives are continually passing under the spell of their power. If imagination is the only thing that acts or is in existing beings or men, as Blake believed, then we should never be certain that it was not some woman treading in the winepress who began that subtle change in men's minds, or that the passion because of which the earth has been drenched in blood did not begin in the imagination of some shepherd boy, lighting up his eye for a moment before it ran upon its way. The future is the imaginal activity of man in its creative march. Imagining is the creative power, not only of the poet, the artist, the actor, and orator, but of the scientist, the inventor, the merchant, and the artisan. Its abuse in unrestrained, unlovely image-making is obvious, but its abuse in undue repression breeds a sterility which robs a man of actual wealth of experience. Imagining novel solutions to ever more complex problems is far more noble than to restrain or kill out desire. Life is the continuing solution of a continuously synthetic problem. Imagining creates events. Our world, created out of men's imagining, comprise unnumbered warring beliefs. Therefore, there can never be a perfectly stable or static state. Today's events are bound to disturb our yesterday's established order. Imaginative men and women invariably unsettle a pre-existing peace of mind. Hold fast to your ideal in your imagination. Nothing can take it from you but your failure to persist in imagining the ideal realized. Imagine only such states that are of value or promise well. To attempt to change circumstances before we change our imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an imaginal change. Everything we do, unaccompanied by an imaginal change, is but futile readjustment of surfaces. Imagining the wish fulfilled brings about a union with that state, and during that union we behave in keeping with our imaginal change. This shows us that an imaginal change will result in a change of behavior. However, our ordinary imaginal alterations, as we pass from one state to another, are not transformations, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whenever one state grows so stable as to become our constant mood, our habitual attitude, then that habitual state defines our character and is a true transformation. Now let me call your attention to the design on the cover of this record. You will notice a man sitting on a park bench. imagining himself to be in a home. This is the secret of those who lie in bed awake while they dream things true. They know how to live in their own dream house until, in fact, they do. Man, through the medium of a controlled waking dream, can predetermine his future. That imaginal activity of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled leads man across a bridge of incident to the fulfillment of the dream. If we live in the dream, thinking from it and not of it, then the creative power of imagining will answer our adventurous fancy, and the wish fulfilled will break in upon us and take us unawares. Man is all imagination. Therefore, man must be where he is in imagination, for his imagination is himself. To realize that imagination is not something tied to the senses or enclosed within the spatial boundary of the body is most important. Although man moves about in space by movement of his physical body, he need not be so restricted. He can move by a change in what he is aware of. However real the scene on which sight rests, man can gaze on one never before witnessed. He can always remove the mountain if it upsets his concept of what life ought to be. This ability to mentally move from things as they are to things as they ought to be is one of the most important discoveries that man can make. It reveals man as a center of imagining, with powers of intervention which enable him to alter the course of observed events, moving from success to success through a series of mental transformations of nature, of others, and himself. How does he do it? Self-abandonment. That is the secret. He has to abandon himself mentally to his wish fulfilled, in his love for that state, and in so doing live in the new state and no more in the old state. Now, we can't commit ourselves to what we do not love. So the secret of self-commission is faith plus love. Faith is believing what is incredible. We commit ourselves to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in faith that this act of self-commission will become a reality. And it will, because imagining creates reality. Imagination is both conservative and transformative. It is conservative when it builds its world from images supplied by memory and the evidence of the senses. It is creatively transformative when it imagines things as they ought to be, building its world out of the generous dreams of fancy. In the procession of images, the ones that take precedence naturally are those of the senses. Nevertheless, a present sense impression is only an image. It does not differ in nature from a memory image or the image of a wish. What makes a present sense impression so objectively real is the individual's imagination functioning in it and thinking from it, whereas in a memory image or a wish, the individual's imagination is not functioning in it and thinking from it, but is functioning out of it and thinking of it. If the individual would enter into the image in his imagination, as the design on the cover of this record suggests, then would he know what it is to be creatively transformative. Then would he realize his wish, and then he would be happy. Every image can be embodied, but unless man himself enters the image and thinks from it, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the wish to be realized by the mere passage of time. That which requires imaginative occupancy to produce its effect obviously cannot be effected without such occupancy. We cannot be in one image and not suffer the consequences of not being in another. Imagination is spiritual sensation. Enter the image of the wish fulfilled, then give it sensory vividness and tones of reality by mentally acting as you would act were it a physical fact. Now, this is what I mean by spiritual sensation. Imagine that you are holding a rose in your hand. Smell it. Do you detect the odor of roses? Well, if the rose is not here, why is its fragrance in the air? Through spiritual sensation, that is, through imaginal sight, sound, scent, taste, and touch. Man can give to the image sensory vividness. If he does, all things will conspire to aid his harvesting. And on reflection, he will see how subtle were the threads that led to his goal. He could never have devised the means which his imaginal activity used to fulfill itself. If man longs to escape from his present sense fixation, to transform his present life into a dream of what might well be, he has but to imagine that he is already what he wants to be, and then feel the way he would expect to feel under such circumstances. Let him, like the make-believe of a child who is remaking the world after its own heart, create his world out of pure dreams of fancy. Let him mentally enter into his dream. Let him mentally do what he would actually do were it physically true. He will discover that dreams are realized not by the rich, but by the imaginative. Nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dreams but facts, and facts are the creations of imagining. If man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. Man and his past are one continuous structure. This structure contains all of the facts which have been conserved and still operate below the threshold of his surface mind. For him, it is merely history. For him, it seems unalterable, a dead and permanently fixed past. But for itself, it is living. It is part of the living age. We cannot leave behind us the mistakes of our past, for nothing disappears. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists, and it gives and still gives its results. Man must go back in memory, seek for and destroy the causes of evil, however far back they lie. This going into the past and replaying a scene of the past in imagination as it ought to have been played the first time, I call revision. And revision results in repeal. Changing our lives means changing the past. The causes of the present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past. The past and the present form the whole structure of man. It is carrying all of its contents with it. Any alteration of content will result in an alteration in the present and future. Live nobly, so that mind can store a past well worthy of recall. Should you fail to do so, remember, the first act of correction or cure is always revise. If the past is recreated into the present, so will the revised past be recreated into the present. Or else, the promise that though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow, is a lie. The question may arise as to how, by representing others to ourselves as better than they really were, or mentally rewriting a letter to make it conform to our wish, or by revising the scene of an accident, the interview with the employer, and so on, could change what seems to be the unalterable facts of the past. But remember my claims for imagining. Imagining creates reality. What it makes, it can unmake. It is not only conservative, building a life from images supplied by memory, it is also creatively transformative, altering a theme already in being. The parable of the unjust steward gives the answer to this question. We can alter our world by means of a certain illegal practice, by means of a falsification of the facts, that is, by means of a certain intentional alteration of that which we have experienced, and all this is done in one's own imagination. This is a form of falsehood which not only is not condemned, but is actually approved in the gospel teaching. By means of such a falsehood, a man destroys the causes of evil and acquires friends, and on the strength of this revision proves, judging by the high praise the unjust steward received from his master, that he is deserving of confidence. Because imagining creates reality, we can carry revision to the extreme and revise a scene that would be otherwise unforgivable. We learn to distinguish between man, who is all imagination, from those states into which he may enter. An unjust steward, looking at another's distress, will represent the other to himself, as he ought to be seen. Were he himself in need, he would, like the man on the cover of this record, enter his dream house in his imagination and imagine what he would see, and how things would seem, and how people would act after these things should be. Then in this state he would fall asleep, feeling the way he would expect to feel under such circumstances. Would that all the Lord's people were unjust stewards, mentally falsifying the facts of life to deliver individuals forevermore. For the imaginal change goes forward until at length the altered pattern is realized on the heights of attainment. Our future is our imaginal activity in its creative march. Imagine better than the best you know.
Tonight it is my purpose to show you that God and the eye of man are one. When you say I am, that is the God of Scripture. Confined as you are, you think, how could it be? God created the universe and sustains it. And here I am, like a little worm, 10 years, and then I vanish. But now let us turn to Scripture. We turn now to the 16th chapter of Matthew. And the question is asked of the disciples, the followers, those who have heard him. And he said to them, who do men say that the Son of Man is? And they reply, well, some say John the Baptist, come again. Others, Elijah. Others, Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And then he said to them, but who do you say that I am? And the spokesman called Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he said to him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood could not have told you this, but my Father who is in heaven. So here he equates the Son of Man with the eye of man, not the organ that sees or through which you see, but your sense of awareness, that I amness, when you are aware of being, your consciousness, your human imagination. So he equates the two, the Son of Man spoken of in the Old Testament and brought forward into the New is nothing more than the eye of man. And he calls it the Christ, and defines Christ as the Son of God. Now we find Christ being defined in the New Testament as the power of God and the wisdom of God. So the eye of man is the power of God and the wisdom of God. If man does not know it, well, then he will not exercise that power. He will not exercise that wisdom. So tonight I am trying to persuade you that when you say I, before you say anything, that is the power and the wisdom of God. You can't separate the power of God and the wisdom of God from God. So you will say in the end, I and my Father are one, for he is called the Son of God. Now we are called upon to test this, if it be true. Can we test it? I hope you'll put it to the test. When I tell you that your own wonderful I amness is God, though prior to that you believe that you are little something, moving across the earth for a few years, 70 years, and then you will vanish, in the hope of some restoration, but a hope, no assurance. But now I'm going to tell you that you really are God. Your own wonderful consciousness, your human imagination, that is the God of Scripture. And there is no other God. Imprisoned as you are in these bodies of flesh, you did it for a purpose. Now let us see what it tells us about this Son of Man that is now equated with the I of man. No one has ever ascended into heaven but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. You'll read that in the 3rd chapter, the 13th verse of John. So here we find you are a pre-existent being. No one can ascend into heaven but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. Your ascension in the next verse, the 14th verse, is showing you how you ascend. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. That's all imagery, and yet it is true. You descended into generation in a world of death, where everything begins, it waxes, it wanes, and then it disappears. But there's something in you, clothed in this garment, that does die. That is pre-existent. And its home is heaven, which is harmony. You gave it up completely. You aren't pretending that you're a man. You descended into man. You became man. With all the weaknesses, all the limitations, all the restrictions of man, to experience this world of death and decay. There will come a moment in time that you will ascend from this restriction, taking with you the experience that is yours because of this restriction. And you will ascend in the same manner that Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. That was an adumbration. That was a foreshadowing. You will rise from the base of your spine, up your spine into your own skull, for heaven is within you. And you will rise like a fiery serpent, without any loss of identity. The form you wear, I hesitate to describe it. I will tell you that your face is human, your hands are human, your voice is human, but do not ask me to describe the body that you wear. It's infinite power, infinite wisdom, and yet it is a form. You are that fiery being that descended, not because of anything that was wrong when you descended. The fall is not because of any mistake on our part. It's a predetermined plan to come down into the world of death and decay and overcome it. If coming down, wearing these garments, we knew who we were, pretending that we were men, we could not accomplish it. Any more than an actor on the stage, pretending that he is Hamlet, can actually play that part. He has to actually assume it, but even then it is still with a little something in his mind. He knows he is the great actor who tonight will go home to his lovely home, and he'll take off the garment and hang it up once more, and tomorrow he'll replay the play. You don't do that in this play of God. You don't take off the garment.
You wear it for your 80, and if by strength, your 80, or maybe even longer, or shorter. But the I of man is the God of Scripture. Put it to the test. Let me now, first of all, before we go into the testing of it, make clear what I said on the last lecture night, Friday night, prompted by a question that was asked here. For I had said in the previous lecture that there are ranks in heaven as they are on earth, for this is only a copy. Everything here is a shadow. It's a copy of the eternal realities. Believe me that when you say I, before you say I am John, I am Bill, I am this, I am that, I am the other, you are declaring yourself to be. And that sense of being is God. That's God. Now what are you going to put on it? All things are possible to God. All things. You could say now, as you're seated here, after first affirming that I am, you could then assume that I am, and you name exactly what you want to be. If you believe what I tell you about your own I amness, and remain faithful to what you have assumed, that assumption will harden into fact. When you pray in the true sense of the word, you do not pray to any external God. Everything he creates from within himself. And this pattern, the individual awakens within himself. And who does it? The I of man. And that is God. Now tonight you can test it, as you are called upon to test it. Test yourselves and see. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you fail to meet the test. Examine yourselves to see whether you are holding to the faith. What faith? To have someone tell me that I am a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or a Mohammedan, and holding to that faith that they talk about? No. The faith that I'm talking about tonight. That your own wonderful I amness is God. Test it to see if you're holding to that faith. If you're holding to that faith, and all things are possible to God, you should be able to prove it in the testing. Having convinced myself through experience, I have come to the conclusion that because I am aware that I am, that is God. For if by him all things are made, and without him is not anything made that is made, and I start from scratch, only imagining a state, and then I boldly assume that it is real, that I am actually experiencing that state now. And then in the not distant future, that state crystallizes in my world. For then I have found God. I have found the source of the phenomena of life. My only concern then is to share it with others and tell them, for they're all one. We are one. No one is greater than the other, not fundamentally. In his claims of what he is in the world of Caesar, he has more money, or he has so-and-so and so-and-so, but basically the same creative power in the man tonight behind bars serving life is the same creative power of the one who sentenced him to life. It's the same being. There is only one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. And the word translated, the Lord, is Yod, He, Vav, He. properly translated is I am. When you go unto the people of Israel and they ask you, what is his name? And you claim that the God of Abraham and the God of Jacob and the God of Isaac sent you. You say unto them, I am has sent me. That's my name forever. And by this name I shall be known throughout all generations. But man finds it difficult keeping the tense. And so he speaks of thou art, or he is. And he never actually comes down to the fundamental and knows that I am. I am the cause of the phenomena of my life, good, bad, or indifferent. I have to live with it and change my assumptions if I would change the world in which I live. But now, can I help a seeming other? I say you are myself pushed out. Can I help another? Yes, because there's only one. If your request of me comes within the framework of the golden rule, something that I would like done to me, then I can willingly help you. If you ask of me that which does not come within the frame of the golden rule, do not ask it of me. I grant you complete freedom to go elsewhere and go to anyone who will tell you they can do it in spite of what he said. Go ahead. But if anyone asks of me any request, all that I do is this. It's so simple. We are told in Scripture, whatever we ask of him, knowing that he hears it, it shall be done for us. If we know he hears it. Well, can you imagine you seated here on the surface of your being, a rational being, knowing something that the depth of your own being that encompasses you doesn't know? So you know, and you think, well, he doesn't know. Well, read that in the story of Ezekiel. You'll read it in the 38th chapter. And these are the elders of Israel that went into the dark room. And they are carving on the walls all gruesome things. And they said within themselves, the Lord does not see us. And the Lord is speaking to his prophet Ezekiel. And he said, the elders of Israel say that I do not see them. And watch what they're doing, making all these abominable things within the great cavern. They will all reap them. Because I see everything that the elders of Israel see. But they think because it's dark and it's a cavern, no one knows what he's doing. That God doesn't know it. I've said time and again, there is no fiction in this world. When you pray, go within and close the door of the senses. Deny all that seems so obvious. And your Father who is within will reward you openly. But commune with self, for you and the Father are one. So you commune with self. And what does he tell you? Exactly what was asked of you. He heard it, and he has all the ways and means that you on the surface of your being know not of. He will do it. You can ask anything of one if it comes within the framework of his code of ethics. Don't ask anyone who knows how to pray something that does not come within his golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Just as simple as that. And most of the requests would come within that rule. And so you simply hear it. And then you drop it completely. And in the depths of your own being, you're still hearing it. And the Father knows all means, all ways. And so he singles out the best way to externalize it.
So suspend them just for a moment and try this technique. What would the feeling be like? How would I feel if it were true that I am already the man that I would like to be? And if I am, how would I see my friends and how would they see me? It's all within us. So let my wonderful human imagination see them as they would have to see me if it were true. Bring them into my mind's eye and let them see me. And let them talk to me. And let them congratulate me on my good fortune. And don't duck. Accept the congratulations of your friends. If they really mean it. Actually play the part all within yourself. And then believe it 100%. As we are told in John's letter, the 5th chapter of his first epistle. If we believe that he hears us in all that we ask of him, then we know that we have obtained the request made of him. Well, if you get the right God, you have no doubts in your mind as to whether he heard you or not. For you know you heard it, and that's God. But if you're not quite sure that he heard it, because there are 3 billion talking to him, begging, well, then you may be not quite sure that he heard you. Maybe you don't think you're good enough, but you can't deny that you hear your own mind. You hear your own inner conversation. You hear your own inner speech. Well, if you know that one is God, well, then you are sure he heard you. Now you are told in that 5th chapter, the 15th verse of first epistle of John, if we know that he hears us in all that we ask of him, then we know that we have already obtained the request made of him. Well, all right. There's an interval between that imaginal act and its fulfillment, as there is between the creative act of a man and the birth of that child. Every little thing has an interval of time between the act and its fulfillment. A horse will take 12 months. A woman takes 9 months. The little sheep will take 5 months. A chicken will take 21 days. There are intervals of time. So the Bible teaches every vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens. It will flower. If it be late, then wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late. Different intervals of time. So it may take me a longer time. In this case with this man, 2 months to bring back 4,000 who were unemployed. To put his mind at rest that he doesn't have now to feel that he's going to be fired. He can put in now the extra time. Only a little while, 3 years and 2 months will complete his 30 years with Jones and Laughlin. And then what's a man of his age? 6 more years and then Social Security. So he'd have both. If it happened now, he wouldn't have it. He would be cut on Social Security and he would be let out without a good retirement fund. So she goes back and she reminds him that it happened before. He couldn't afford the roof for the house. And she said, I will see the roof on the house. I remember when it needed a roof. And so she told him, I recall telling you, I remember when he needed it. But soon after something happened in his work, he got the money and the roof is on. The wife wanted an organ, couldn't afford the organ. All right, she said, I remember when you didn't have one. She has the organ. And she took one after the other. Of all these things, he's still, with all the evidence in the world, he is still working on some outside God. He thinks he's doing the wrong thing. He feels that if perchance that man is simply a devil incarnate, and he's taken me from my real God, which means something external to himself, that he fashions out of his own mind, and fashions with his hand, because all these little nonsenses that we buy, and stick them up as holy objects. First of all, no artist really ever designed them. It's an offense to speak of an artist when you see these horrible monstrosities that we buy and stick around the place and call them religious objects. So, find who he is. He is the living God. He is not a dead God. You want to read the 115th Psalm about the kind of gods that men worship. The whole psalm is devoted to the false god that the whole vast world worships. He has eyes, but he sees not. Ears, and he hears not. Feet, and he walks not. Hands, and he touches not. Just a dead thing made by human hands, when the living God is within man as his own wonderful human imagination. So I tell you that all that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your own wonderful human imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. All things exist in the human imagination, and everything you see as an objective reality was produced by imagining. Think of one thing, just think of one thing that would simply deny it. You can't think of one thing. So you go to the moon. You first had to imagine it. Had to imagine everything concerning the machine that took you to the moon. Everything in the world first has to be imagined and then executed. All right. The intelligence to do it will come, but you take the blueprint first and conceive it and dwell in it as though it were true. And no power on earth can stop it from becoming so. Your visions will clarify itself. At night, it's a different kind of a night. Your days are different. You see people differently. You can't walk by any man and not see him God incarnate. Can't do it. Even if he has the most horrible background. And he said simply, well, a murderer. And it's proven that he is. You still see God incarnate. But so sound asleep, the poor thing doesn't know. If you can only just get to it and show him that he really is God incarnate. And the one he thought he killed, he has been restored to life. Not to the senses of man, but he is restored in a world just like this, terrestrial just like this. About his business, he continues his work until he too awakens from this dream of life. But all will awaken eventually. But why not start now? Start now to tell man who he really is. God and man are one. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Nothing but God in the universe. All God. And eventually, you and I will awake. And because God is one, not two, you and I are one. Without loss of identity, that's one of the strangest mysteries in the world. Without loss of identity, we are one. I know that from my own personal experience. We are one. And yet, I am individualized. And you are individualized. And we tend forever and forever toward ever greater and greater individualization. And yet, we are one. And I will bring that out to the best of my ability as we proceed with these series of lectures. You will hear it. But tonight, if you're here for the first time and you want something practical, you apply what I've told you. First, have an objective. You must have an objective. You can't say, well, I don't know what I want. Well, all right. Come back the next time. Ask yourself, what would I like of life? Don't be ashamed to name it, what would I like of life? Well then, try to get some objective. Now, prayer, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing more than the subjective appropriation of the objective hope. That is the way to success. I appropriate it subjectively. How do I appropriate a state subjectively? Well, suppose now, this very moment, I wanted a ball, an ordinary baseball. But there isn't a baseball in the room, all right? But I want one. I would actually assume that I am holding a baseball in my hand until I can feel it. You think you can't feel it? Well, now try it. Try to feel what it would be like if you held a baseball. Now, to prove that you have held it, see what it feels like, the difference now, a tennis ball. See any difference? All right, a golf ball. See any difference? A piece of silk. You feel any difference? If you can distinguish between these many objects, though they are subjective, then they must exist somewhere. If you can actually separate them in your mind's eye and distinguish between these objects, I can begin to feel, begin to sense, begin to smell a rose. Well, a rose doesn't smell or doesn't actually have the odor of another flower. I can detect the rose. Now a lily, an Easter lily. I can detect that. Well, what does it do? Well, I'm going to get them. Someone will think of Neville and send him a flower. And it's going to be the flower that I'm going to actually feel and touch and smell. It works that way. Money has an odor. It's unlike any odor in the world. It's more fragrant to the miser than the most marvelous perfume in the world. He can tell it. You put a money bag to his face, and it's like putting roses to mine. He loves it. He can smell money. He can feel it. Money has a distinct feel about it. Put a $20 bill in your hand and ask you to feel it, and then put another piece of paper in your hand, and you can tell the difference. There's a difference. It is an odor to it. All this is part of the inner man, that all things are possible to him. Try it. Before you condemn it, try it. And if you have the evidence to support my claim, well, then it doesn't matter what the world will tell you. If he laughs at you, so what? So they laughed at everyone who had an idea that seemed a little bit off-center. Always laughed at him. They laughed at the idea of going to the moon. Well, now it's an accomplished fact. There are still those who won't believe it happened, you know, because they don't want to believe that it ever happened. There are those who said you couldn't go down and actually live underwater. Now we have a submarine. There are still those who won't believe it. You can present them with all the facts in the world, and they won't believe it. So I tell you, you try it first. And if it proves itself in performance, it doesn't really matter what the whole vast world thinks. Go about your Father's business, which is yourself, and then live a full and wonderful life in this world of Caesar. And the day will come, you will actually depart this world. I mean this age. Because those who are departing it now, unless they are awakened, they'll still find themselves in a world just like this. But those who have awakened, who have experienced the second birth, the birth from above, find themselves in an entirely different age, where they're all imagination. And they are perfect. And wherever they go, everything is perfect. You don't have to raise a finger to make anything perfect, because they're perfect. All things must conform to them, for they're perfect. That's heaven. So heaven is not an area, it's not a realm, it's a body. And when that body is awakened within you, which is the wonderful human imagination completely awake, then wherever you go clothed in that body that is completely awake, everything is perfect. If you found yourself in a forest of dead trees that all burst into foliage, in the desert they would all bloom like the rose, because you are there. No blind man, deaf man, no handicapped man could stand in your presence. He would be instantly transformed into a perfect man because you are perfect. That's heaven. It's harmony. So it's not a place where you're going to go, pearly streets and all that nonsense. No. It's just simply you in a world that is perfect because you are perfect. And the day will come, you will awaken that body, for it's in you now. That body is in you, but it's sound asleep. And one day you will experience the resurrection. And you'll know the mystery of the resurrection. When you rise, and you rise within yourself. For the grave in which Christ is buried, which the Lord is buried, is your own skull. That's where he is buried. And in that tomb where he is buried, one day he will awake, and he will come out of that tomb. And it's you who comes out of the tomb, and you'll know who you are. He is buried in every child in the world, this universal being, and yet one. Billions of us, and yet only one Lord. And that one Lord, in his fullness, is buried in you, individually. And when you awaken, you are he. So tonight, take a go. Make it a lovely go, either for yourself or for another. For any time that you exercise your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you're mediating God to that other. So, bring a friend before your mind's eye. Represent him to yourself as the man or the woman that you would like them to be. And don't tell them, ask for no praise, just assume that they're talking to you and telling you the most marvelous news about themselves. And you congratulate them on that good news. And go your own way. Believe in the reality of that imaginal act. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen the day after, or a week later, or a month later. It has its own appointed hour, and it is ripening, and it's going to flower. So don't be concerned. Leave it alone. And it will come to pass. So this is what I mean by feeling is the secret. I catch the mood, the feeling that would be mine if I were what I want to be. I don't have to touch something. I can if I want to. But it's the mood I'm speaking of. What would the feeling be like if she were well? If she were this? And then you catch it, just as though it is true. You always go to the end, and the end is where you begin. You're always imagining ahead of our evidence. So go to the end, and feel the end. And then dwell in that end, even though reason denies it and your senses deny it. You turn your back upon the doubters. That is your senses and what reason dictates. That's the hell or the devil or Satan in the world. That's the doubter. So you turn your back upon it. And then you walk as though things were as you want them to be. And living in that assumption, it slowly hardens into fact. Even though at the moment of the assumption it was denied by reason, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So you learn to assume and learn to persist in the assumption, and it will come to pass.
She felt did so much for, that she wants to show her appreciation. She did it then. She is playing the part of Thaddeus. That is Thaddeus, one of the most neglected characters in Scripture, for it means praise. It means thanksgiving. And so few people will stop to say thanks. Were there not 10 of you, and only one returned to say thank you? There were 10 who were instantly cured, and only one came back to say thank you. That's Thaddeus. And so if you actually express joy, express thanksgiving for the slightest little thing done you, you are actually exercising that talent that is known in Scripture as Thaddeus. It's personified as a disciple. He's the 10th one. And so neglected because so few people are grateful. First of all, they reflect upon what happened. And then they give all praise to the means employed rather than the actual cause of the phenomenon. But here tonight, we are simply presenting Andrew. So I brought you tonight to meet Jesus. And I do not point to any being outside of you. Do not look for him in any face. Do not look for him in any place in the world. I point within you to the Lord Jesus Christ. And he is your own wonderful human imagination. Man is God and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Now, before we go into the silence, let me once more try to explain this simple technique. You will have to practice it and use your own rhythm. You don't have to be in church to do it. You can be sitting here tonight. You can be at home listening to nice music. You can be simply relaxing with a drink. It doesn't matter what you're doing and where you are, but we want to do it. Get into a lovely, quiet, relaxed frame. No so-called holy attitude. Forget that. You're holy when you're in love. God is love. So you would love it for someone else. That is all that you need. That mood. Wouldn't it be wonderful if she actually had it? If he had it? If they had it? Also, you know exactly what you want now. And then you imagine you are seeing them. You can see them in your mind's eye and see them vividly. And then breathe yourself into a rhythm. They're telling you that they have it. And you're getting yourself worked up emotionally because they're telling you that they have exactly what you know they would want in this world. And then you reach a certain point and you explode. Something actually goes out of you. It's power. And you'll read the words, "Who touched me? For I perceive virtue has gone out of me." At that moment, she was healed. Who touched me? And they say, what? With the crowd? How could you tell who touched you with this enormous crowd? You know. You did it yourself. You work yourself up into a certain emotional state, and then suddenly you explode. And you feel everything go out. And you cannot repeat it. There's no desire to repeat it. It was an actual psychic, sexual act. But there's no physical act. There is no evidence of any physical act. But it's the same thrill that you would were it a physical act. Work yourself right up into that state and then let it go. And do not raise one finger to make it so, any more than you would after impregnation. What can you do after pregnancy is taking place? Nothing. Leave it alone and let it take place in its own good time. Now let us go into the silence. God became as we are, that we may be as he is. That is God's purpose. That is his plan which he set forth in Christ for the fullness of time. But God himself never left us, and therefore God cannot return. I am with you always, to the end of the age. Therefore God has never left humanity, and therefore he cannot return. And yet, in the promise of the Holy Spirit, the coming of a definite divine person is promised. Scoffers will come in the last days scoffing and saying, where is the promise of his coming, For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all things have continued as they were,
from the beginning of creation. So a definite person is promised. Now this is my theme tonight. God and man are permanently made one in the person of Christ. God became as I am, but without Christ revealing it, I would not know it. God became as every child born of woman, and yet that child could go through the ages and never know that God became him. And the purpose is that he may become God. He will not in eternity know it unless he knows it in the person of Christ. Now this is what I mean. I'll take now the first book of the New Testament, the book of Galatians, not in its canonical order, but in its chronological order. It was the first book written, either that or 1 Thessalonians, but it's a toss-up within a year or two. And this is Paul's really biography, his confession. He said, I will have you know, brethren, that the gospel which I have preached is not according to man's gospel. For I did not receive it from a man, nor was I taught it, but it came through a revelation of Jesus Christ. He was not speculating, trying to set up some workable philosophy of life. This is something that came through revelation. Revealed truth is that which you cannot logically prove. It's something that is entirely different. It is real as this room, more so, but it's something that reason cannot put its teeth into it. Now this is my theme. I mean, God became me, and through the centuries I have walked, and God within me, and never left me, not for one moment, not even in my dreams at night. He is the dreamer in me, and the waker and the dreamer are one. And here he never left me, not for one moment. And I didn't know it until Christ came. But Christ comes to us individually, not collectively. He comes to the individual and reveals to the individual who that individual is. If you study the scriptures, for when it came to me, I certainly was the most startled person in the world. I was awed. I could hardly believe that the man that I know so well, that did many things of which I am ashamed, and possibly today am capable of doing similar things, and still, in spite of that, he came to me and revealed to me the being that I really am. Well, who is this Christ? As Paul said, he did not receive it from a man. He was not taught it by a man. Well, I make the same confession. I did not hear it from a man. I was not taught it by a man. It came through revelation. I had never known for one moment anything about this revelation until the night that it happened. Oh yes, I had heard of Christ. My mother taught me Christ. In school, I was taught the story of Christ. But then, I went out into the world, I saw pictures on the wall, and they told me this is the artist's concept of Christ, painted under inspiration. And here they are, 40 or 50 different pictures of Christ. No two looking alike, each claiming that it was inspired by the original being. And no two are alike. That is not Christ. What the churches teach concerning Christ is not Christ. The Christ of Scripture is David. That is the Christ. There is no physical description of Jesus in Scripture. There is a physical description of David in Scripture. And when he comes, you know him instantly. There is no uncertainty as to who you're looking at, and no uncertainty as to the relationship between you and the one that you're observing. And then you go back, stunned the next day, and you search your scriptures to find that it was always there. But he is the anointed one. He is the Christed one. He is the chosen one. Rise and anoint him. This is he. And then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily from that day forward. And so I have found David, and with my holy oil I have anointed him. And David then cried unto me, Thou art my father. As I told him in the beginning, he was my son. Here is the relationship. Well, you would not know in eternity that God became you, actually became you, and that you are permanently made one, but you will not know it save with the coming of the person Christ. Not some immensity, not some enormous glow of light that would not convince you that you are God. It could not convince you that you are the Father of the Son of God. All the power in the world could not convince you that you are the Father of the Son of God. The Son has to appear. And when he appears, at that moment, in the twinkle of an eye, you know, and you're exactly who you are. And all the darkness is gone, and now you know, and you walk in the light. Walk telling it to those who will hear it, and giving reason to everyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. For it's now supported by Scripture. Prior to that, you didn't find it, and you're not encouraged to find it. For no minister that I ever heard, no true teacher that I have ever heard, has ever voiced it. I never found it in a book that I've ever read. It was in the Bible, but I didn't see it. But all the other books that I read, in my hungry search for the truth, did not even breathe it. When I first came to this city, back in 1945, the lady who met me at the airport and brought me over to the hotel, and she possibly didn't quite notice the time. So when I came to the meeting, I was about almost at the time to start talking. But the head of the organization called me aside into his private office. And he said to me, I've heard some very distressing things about you. I said, like what? He said, I have heard that you do not treat the Bible as secular history. I said, no, I do not. I had not yet received the vision of the Son of God. But I knew the Bible could be interpreted psychologically, for I had proven it day in and day out, not only to my own satisfaction, but those who heard and believed what I told them, they too changed their lives based upon my interpretation of Scripture. So he said to me, from my platform, you cannot say anything that I heard that you were saying up in San Francisco. I thanked him. I said, I will abide by your decision tonight. I'm your guest tonight. I was addressing his alumni, and there were about, I would say, 500 present, all graduates of his institution. And so I spoke to the crowds who were there.
So you try it tonight. Try it with anything in this world. The unmarried, if you desire to be married, what symbol in the world would imply that you are married? A little band in this Western world, a little band around this finger. Not around any other finger, around this finger. It doesn't have to be the biggest aspidastra in the world. Just a plain little gold ring. If you wore it there, it would imply you're married. Sleep tonight as though you wore one. Don't put your physical thumb on it. Put your imaginary thumb on it.
and feel it in your imagination. You can do it. Feel a ball. Can you feel it? Then feel a piece of silk. Feel this, one after the other. Can you discriminate between all these different sensations? If you can discriminate between this and a tennis ball and a baseball, a piece of silk, then you can't discriminate between nothings. They must exist, though unseen by your eyes, they still must exist. So if I can discriminate between these unseen objects, these objects, though unseen, must be real. Well, now take that and put it there. But feel when you wear it that you are proud of the one who put it there. You don't have to see what he looks like. When it's put there, you'll be proud of his name, to bear it, and you'll be proud of him. Just put it there. You know why I know that? My wife did it. She did it. Actually, she did it. One day she was in the presence of a so-called sensitive. And this one said to her, "Why did you take off your wedding ring?" She said, "I am not married." "Oh," she said, "don't fool me. You took off your wedding ring." She said, "But I'm not married." She said, "I'll even tell you his name." And she started off with never. She didn't quite get it, but she was coming very, very close to it. She was actually sensing what my wife in consciousness was feeling. When I first met her, I wanted her the very first day I knew her. I wanted to marry her. But I was entangled. Was I entangled? But by this law, I disentangled myself. Without hurting anyone, I disengaged myself from all these complexities so that I could actually legitimately say, "Will you marry me?" But in the meanwhile, she was wearing the ring. I hadn't yet put it there, but she allowed me to put it there and slept as though I had put it there. So I tell you, unmarried ladies, if you desire to be married, maybe you don't. If you do, that's the way to do it. And it'll come out of the nowhere. You don't have to go and buy anyone or try to meet the right people. Usually when you try to meet the right one, he's always the wrong one. So don't go searching. Those who go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. So you fall in love, you don't have to seek for it. You draw them. They come to you. So here, this is the power of which I speak. The power of the universe, the power that created and sustains the universe, is resident in you as your own wonderful human imagination. That's God. Don't forget it. I know it's difficult when man has been trained to believe in an external God. And he goes to church and gets on his knees and he prays to an external God. And he goes home at night, maybe he does say his prayers, and he gets down on his knees and he prays to an external God. All right, maybe that's a nice thing for someone to do. But I tell you, he isn't out there at all. You won't be criticized for it, but he is within you. Very personal, may I tell you. He is very, very personal. And within you. When you're told in Scripture, of the rock that begot us, we are unmindful. And that seems to be all a figure of speech on how true that thing is. One night, sitting in the silence, rather it was an afternoon, I was thinking of nothing in particular, and suddenly before my eyes came this quartz, an enormous quartz. As I looked at it, it fragmented itself, broke into numberless little pieces, and then it reassembled itself. As it reassembled itself, it was not into a quartz, but into a man, seated in the lotus posture. I'm looking at this man, all seated now, perfect man. As I looked at him, I'm looking at myself. Here I am, the perceiver, observing myself, seated in the lotus posture, this deep, deep meditation. And as I became aware that I'm looking at myself, it began to glow. And it glowed and glowed and glowed. When it reached the intensity of luminosity, it exploded. And then I returned to this level. Where did I see him? Within me. That being is meditating this. This is but a projection of itself in the world. And when he wakes within me, completely wakes, I am he. God actually became me, that I may become God. And he's put me through all the paces, allowing me to make all the mistakes, to make a monster like the thing that I talked about earlier. I made that, and I made a lovely one. And he allows it in his meditation. He is the dreamer in me. And he's dreaming this, and dreaming everything that I dream in this world. And when he awakes, this will cease to be, and I am he. And he is God. So I tell you, go out and try it. Begin tonight. I make you this promise, if you try it faithfully, you will not fail.
Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. I am here at the book of Neville, Power of Awareness, at the chapter 1 called I Am. There is an interesting thing here when it comes to the I Am concept, that whatever you ask after the I Am, you are that. You are at that exact state you affirm after it. But the genesis, the origin of changing states, is always I am in manifestation. First, I already am, but after that, I choose what I can be, where I can be. There are unlimited possibilities. We choose the one we want. We only choose the one we want. If we want something good, we choose the thing we want for us. Look what Neville says here. I am cannot be divided. I may conceive myself to be a rich man, a poor man, a beggar man, or a thief, but the center of my being remains the same, regardless of the concept I hold of myself. At the center of manifestation, there is only one I am manifesting in legions of forms or concepts of itself. And I am that I am. The center of being, the center of manifestation is I am. I am is a self-definition of the Absolute, the foundation on which everything rests. I am is a first cause substance. I am is a self-definition of God. I am has sent me unto you. I am that I am. Be still and know that I am God. So, before you know what you want, or whatever you desire, you need to know who you are first. He also says this, I am is the feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. I just wanted to share with you guys the short concept of I amness. Hope you enjoyed this, and let me know your thoughts about this by leaving a comment below. See you in the next video.
Last December, hundreds of scientists met in Montreal and read their papers to each other. Naturally, the entire world printed what they had to say. Fortunately for me, the Los Angeles Times carried it daily. I must confess, everyone really fired me. But one in particular interested me. And this scientist read a paper on the sperm. He said the sperm remains as much a mystery today as it was when man first became curious about its nature. And then he made this little statement. The sperm somehow easily passes through the surface of an egg, although the outside of the egg has no holes in it, either before or after fertilization. Well, that fired me. On the morning of the 19th of February, I was lying in bed quite early, thinking of this strange mystery of the sperm and wondering all about it. And suddenly I felt myself detached from this body. I was not in my room, but I was in a room, and the room was sealed. There was no entrance, no exit, just a sealed room. But as I entered it, it became alive, it became animated. Then I thought of my bed, my body, and in one moment I am back on my bed. I thought of another detachment. I'm in an entirely different room, but it's also sealed.
How I got in, I do not know, other than I simply imagined myself away from my body. I did not single out the room. The room was completely sealed. No entrance, no exit. Then I thought, here are these unnumbered states of consciousness. You can't number them. You can liken each state to an egg. And every state remains just like the egg until fertilized. And the presence that fertilizes the egg is simply our consciousness. We must be in it to activate it, to animate it. You could this very moment single out any state, and by the use of your imagination, imagine that you're in it. You'd be in it. Think this very moment of your living room, or any room in your house. Take an object, a familiar object in your room, and bring it as close as you can. If it's really here, well, then you can't be here in this room. As you become intense about it, concentrated on it, you are really where you are imagining yourself to be. For man being all imagination, he must be where he is in imagination. But what have I done there? I've fertilized it. I've actually made it real. And in a way that I do not know, I'm going to go there. But now you will say, naturally, I'm going to go there today. It's my home. I use that only to illustrate a point. You could take any place, no matter where it is, any part of the world. If you did the same thing to it that you would now do to your home, you will find yourself compelled to move across a bridge of incident leading up to the fulfillment of that state. You don't devise the means, but there's so many little facets to this wonderful art of imagining. I'll tell you one to show you the danger. When one wants one thing above all things in this world, and they're willing to sacrifice their moral, ethical code, in fact, every code, it also works. That's why I warned you in my last book, I can only acquaint you with the law and leave you to your choice and its risk. And I mean risk. I call this lady a friend. She is a friend. I'm not here to judge anyone in the world. And she is my friend living in New York City. When she was a young girl, she was as poor as a church mouse. She had nothing. Her only claim to recognition was the fact she descended physically from the Adamses, our presidents. And she was very proud of that fact, very proud. But she had no money. The one thing she wanted above everything in this world was money. And I don't mean a few $100,000. I mean money in the true sense of the word. To the disgust of her parents, she used to always pretend she had fabulous fortunes. She is not, may I say, a good-looking lady, either in form or in feature. Nice in many other respects, but you could never accuse her of being a beautiful woman. But nevertheless, she dreamed this state, and she just simply wanted money. At a party one day, she met a young man, just a few years her senior. He had money, multiple millions. She had nothing. She had a physical line leading to the Adamses. He had oodles of money. His line led to one of the bishops of New York State. I do not say this to in any way discourage you in your admiration of some bishop or some man of the cloth, but his grandfather was a bishop in New York State. He knew all the lovely parcels of, well, real estate, where tomorrow, if you could hold on to it, what it would be worth. And so here's a bishop of the church, instead of taking care of his flock, he was taking care of his pocket, and he left millions to this man's father, who in turn left it to him. My friend only wanted money. And so in no time flat, they got married. And they lived for 21 years in intimate hostility. Really. Solid beyond measure. I wouldn't dare discuss it from the platform. So at the end of these 21 years, they called it the day and divided the millions. She still wanted more millions. She could open Tiffany with her diamonds and her jewelry. Still wanted more. She had a little cousin who always worked for a salary. But he got in on the ground floor when our huge big corporations of the day were being organized. Saved his money, he was a bachelor, he lived alone, very frugal, and he bought a little bit of this stock, a little bit of that, never touched it. It split and split and split and split. Year before last, he had the presence of mind to die. The only member of his family that would ever see him was this lady. She knew in some strange way he had money. She would bring him home for an occasional dinner, would call him on the phone. So when they found his will, she was the only member of the family named in the will. He has other first cousins, but they were above it all. They came from the Adamses. And he must be on the outside or something. But he was not what they would cultivate. When the will was read, my friend and my friend alone got it. The last estimate, they're still finding it. He put it in this bank, in that box, in the other box, well over $1 million. The stocks and bonds are worth, and she got it all. Now her cousins aren't speaking to her because she got it. The price she paid for money, I hope that no one here would be willing to pay. She could have had all the millions she now has, plus happiness. She could have, if she only knew the law. You want it, but you condition it. You want it with dignity. That statement of Millikan. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. That's our great Millikan. He was a poor boy too, and he grew tired of his poverty. And the story is told me by the one who interviewed him after he got the prize, the Nobel Prize, in this cosmic ray studies. And he said to her, the interviewer, I was a poor boy, raised in a nice environment. My father was a traveling minister. He had no money, but he gave us good books. We were always playing games, a strong body and a strong mind. But he had a coat, a decent coat. And so I wanted money, but I wanted it in this manner. So I locked myself in a room one day. I did not have even a glass of water for 16 hours. And in that interval, I repeated over and over and over to myself this thought that I wrote out. I have, in the present tense, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Well, he certainly earned it. He had all these things when he died. He had the respect of the world. He gave to the world as much or more than they gave to him. Yes, he had millions. But look what he gave to the world. That's how he wanted it. My friend could have done something similar, but no, she wanted money. And she was willing to pay the price, any price, and how she has paid it. So I warn you, yes, you want something, and the thing that will fertilize it is your own wonderful human imagination. When you know exactly what you want, occupy it. I find one of the great fallacies of the world is perpetual construction, deferred occupancy. We know what we want, but we leave it out there and hope that the passing of time will make it. It won't do it. I have to occupy it and make there here, and make then now, and dwell in it just as though it were true. And if I dwell in it just as though it's true, though 1 second later the phone rings and breaks the spell, or someone calls me, or I wake from it, I have fertilized it. You go into this state and you fertilize it. I may not recognize my harvest when it comes in due season. It'll come. It may not come tonight, it may not come tomorrow, but it will come because I fertilized it. I went into a state, occupied it, and the whole thing becomes fertilized. But every egg has its own appointed hour, and it ripens and it will flower. If to me it seem long, then I must wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late. These infinite states of the world are waiting for occupancy, waiting to be fertilized by us. That's why we must become so extremely discriminating. Know what you want, and do make it conform to your code of decency, your wonderful ethical code. You don't have to in any way tarnish that code. You don't, to get what you want in this world. But men are not aware of that, and they're quite willing to tarnish it a bit to get what they really want in this world.
Hello and welcome to the channel Neville Goddard. This is the book Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. Leave the mirror and change your face. Leave the world alone and change your conception of yourself. Neville. Chapter 1. I am. All things, when they are admitted, are made manifest by the light, for everything that is made manifest is light. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 30. The light is consciousness. Consciousness is one, manifesting in legions of forms or levels of consciousness. There is no one that is not all that is, for consciousness, though expressed in an infinite series of levels, is not divisional. There is no real separation or gap in consciousness. I am cannot be divided. I might conceive myself to be a rich man, a poor man, a beggar man, or a thief, but the center of my being remains the same, regardless of the concept I hold of myself. At the center of manifestation there is only one I am, manifesting in legions of forms or concepts of itself, and I am that I am. I am is the self-definition of the Absolute, the foundation on which everything rests. I am is the first cause substance. I am is the self-definition of God. I am hath sent me unto you. I am that I am. Be still and know that I am God. I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. The awareness of being remains, regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who, where, and what I am. I am is that which, amid unnumbered forms, is ever the same. This great discovery of cause reveals that, good or bad, man is actually the arbiter of his own fate, and that it is his concept of himself that determines the world in which he lives, and his concept of himself is his reactions to life. In other words, if you are experiencing ill health, knowing the truth about cause, you cannot attribute the illness to anything other than to the particular arrangement of the basic cause substance, an arrangement which was produced by your reactions to life, and is defined by your concept, I am unwell. This is why you are told, let the weak man say, I am strong. Joel chapter 3 verse 10. For by his assumption the cause substance I am is rearranged and must, therefore manifests that which its rearrangement affirms. This principle governs every aspect of your life, be it social, financial, intellectual, or spiritual. I am is that reality to which, whatever happens, we must turn for an explanation of the phenomena of life. It is I am's concept of itself that determines the form and scenery of its existence. Everything depends upon its attitude towards itself. That which it will not affirm as true of itself cannot awaken in this world. That is, your concept of yourself, such as I am strong, I am secure, I am loved, determines the world in which you live. In other words, when you say I am a man, I am a father, I am an American, you are not defining different I ams. You are defining different concepts or arrangements of the one case substance, that one I am. Even in the phenomena of nature, if the tree were articulate, it would say, I am a tree, an apple tree, a fruitful tree. When you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, conceiving itself to be something good, bad, or indifferent, and becoming that which is conceived itself to be, you are free from the tyranny of second causes, free from the belief that there are causes outside of your own mind that can affect your life. In the state of consciousness of the individual is found the explanation of the phenomena of life. If man's concept of himself were different, everything in his world would be different. His concept of himself being what it is, everything in his world must be as it is. Thus, it is abundantly clear that there is only one I am, and you are that I am. And while I am is infinite, you, by your concept of yourself, are displaying only a limited aspect of the infinite I am. Build thee more stately mansions, O my soul, as the swift seasons roll. Leave thy low-vaulted past, let each new temple nobler than the last. Shut thee from heaven with a dome more vast, till thou at length art free, leaving thine outgrown shell by life's unresting sea. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think about this video. See you in another video. The first principle. I want to talk to you about the first principle, which you can always fall back on when in doubt. This first principle is: be still and know that I am God. No matter what happens, turn within and be still. Know that your awareness is God, and that all things are possible to you. Test yourself, and you will prove this statement in the testing. Then you will be free from your former limitations of belief. No matter what is happening on the outside, turn to the first principle. Start by being, then claiming I am God. Ask yourself, is this true? You will never know the truth until you test it. I proved it, then I tried it again and again. And the more I tried it, the more I realized that the statement in the 46th Psalm was true, that God really is my own wonderful consciousness. For I learned to be still and know that I am God. Relax, be still, and question yourself, saying, are you really God? Address yourself as though you were too. If you are God and can do all things, prove it to me by giving me my desire so I can feel its presence now. See if he will prove himself in performance, and when he does, do it again. Keep on asking, and when he proves himself here on this level, then let these things which can be put to the test come through, for they will. From the book The First Principle, 1969. Quote of the Day by Neville Goddard. Do not say it will take 6 months or a year. The minute the desire comes upon you, assume it is already a fact. You, and you alone, have given your desire a time interval, and time is relative when it comes to this world. Do not wait for anything to come to pass. Accept it now as though it were and see what happens.